Welcome to the March 21st, 2023 meeting of the Plan Commission for Monroe County. I'd like to call this meeting to order now that we have a quorum. Would you please call the roll?
I can go ahead and call the roll, Margaret.
Yes, thank you, Jackie. Ms. Nestor-Jelen is our Director of Planning, and she will be coordinating the meeting from home today. So we don't anticipate any difficulties, but the Assistant Director of Planning is here in case we encounter any technical difficulties. So thank you, Ms. Nestor-Jelen. Please call the roll.
Okay, so this is calling the roll for the March 21st, 2023 meeting. Margaret Clemens.
Here.
John Enright Randolph. Bernie Garitas. Jeff Morris.
Here.
Cheryl Munson.
Here.
Edward Ullman.
Here.
Dee Owens.
Here.
Jerry Pittsford. Julie Thomas.
Here.
And then a non-voting member from the City Plan Commission, Chris Cockrum.
Here.
Okay, so we have 7 members attending, 5 in person, and then 1 non-voting member. We have a quorum.
Pardon me, Jackie, I may have missed my name being called. It's Bernie.
Oh, Bernie. Okay, thank you.
I'm here.
All right.
Is there a motion to introduce the evidence?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, I'll introduce the following items into the evidence. The Monroe County zoning ordinance as adopted and amended. The Monroe County comprehensive plan as adopted and amended. The Monroe County subdivision control ordinance as adopted and amended. The Monroe County Plan Commission rules of procedure as adopted and amended. And the cases that were legally advertised and scheduled for a hearing on tonight's agenda.
Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
Second.
Okay, I'll call the roll. Tron Enright Randolph.
Yes.
Bernie Garitas.
Yes.
Jeff Morris.
Yes.
Cheryl Munson.
Yes.
Edward Ullman.
Yes.
Dee Owens.
Yes.
Jerry Pittsford. Julie Thomas.
Yes.
Okay, motion carries 8-0.
There have been no changes to the agenda. Is there a motion to approve the agenda as published?
So moved.
Is there a second?
I second that.
Okay, and is there a motion to, okay, so yes, please call the roll.
Okay, Bernie Garitas.
Yes.
Jeff Morris.
Yes.
Cheryl Munson.
Yes.
Edward Ullman.
Yes.
Dee Owens.
Yes.
Julie Thomas.
Yes.
Margaret Clemens.
Yes?
Tron Enright Randolph.
Yes.
Okay, motion carries 8-0.
Okay, is there a motion to approve the minutes either together or separately? The January 17th and the February 21st meetings?
I move that we approve the minutes of the January 17th and the
February 21st?
February 21st minutes of both meetings together.
I second
Okay.
that, and I'll just state that on January 17th, the only member absent was Jerry Pittsford.
Okay, thank you. I'll call the roll. Jeff Morris.
Yes.
Cheryl Munson.
Yes.
Edward Ullman.
Yes.
Dee Owens.
Yes.
Julie Thomas.
Yes.
Margaret Clemens.
Yes?
Tron Enright Randolph.
Yes.
Bernie Garitas.
Yes.
Motion carries 8-0.
There's technically no administrative business except for an announcement. Maybe Ms. Nestor-Jelen, you could make it about the county development ordinance review sessions that will be held this Thursday at 5:30.
Yes, so we will be hosting virtual-only focus groups this Thursday at 5:30 PM. I can go ahead and share my screen to show the CDO website if that's okay. Thank you. Okay, so our monroecdo.com page is a great location for people to go to find the latest information about the county development ordinance. On the homepage, we do have information regarding our Zoom meetings that will be held on Thursday, March 23rd at 5:30 PM via Zoom. We'll have 3 groups that will be held concurrently, so you can take a look at which group you would like to join. So economic development, environmental protections, construction review. Each of these will last 1 hour and 15 minutes from 5:30 to 6:45. The Zoom link information is directly below on the homepage, and it's also on the events calendar. Tomorrow, we will also be posting a link to the PowerPoint that we will be going over at staff to introduce everyone to the topic and then have some pointed questions for group discussion. So we hope it's a helpful and productive meeting and that people can join us. And if there's any questions, they can feel free to call our office at 812-349-2560 or email us at planningoffice@co.monroe.in.us. We've received a few questions as to why the meetings are Zoom only. This is actually a counter meeting to our December 13th in-person meetings that were held hybrid. It was during a Plan Commission meeting, but we had several Zoom-only attendees. And so there was a request to have a virtual option. So we're hoping that this is able to include the people that couldn't attend in person in December. And we're always seeking your feedback of how we can make this process better. So please let us know.
So thank you, Ms. Nestor Jelen. So I'd just like to say to the public that this is one of your multiple opportunities to participate in how the future of our county will be zoned and what will be the standards, what will it look like going forward, what will happen to properties around you, and how development will be envisioned for the future. It's something that governs exactly what we're doing here tonight, which is our planning commission. Whenever we have standards or we have reviews and there are exceptions to those standards and there's zoning and requests to change the zoning, well, it all starts from this document. So your opportunity to influence it for Module 2 especially will be this Thursday from 5:30 to 6:45. And it's a meeting to be held only on Zoom. So just to let you know that that is an opportunity for the public to have input into the future look and construction of the county and preservation of the county as well. So with that being said, let's move on to.
Madam President?
Yes, Mr. Tron
I
and
just
Randall.
had a question regarding this,
Yes.
if I may. I guess, Jackie, I just wanted to look out for our representative from the city of Bloomington and make sure that Chris has been kind of slated into one of these categories if he's able to participate. And I just wanted to make sure that that was being taken care of.
Thanks, John. I will follow up with Chris in an email and see which group he'd like to attend. So I will follow up. Thank you.
Okay. Okay, thank you. We'll move on to the first item in unfinished business, item 1, REZ-22-12, and this is the Rolfson rezone from RE1 to Ag RR, and this is the final hearing concerning 119.34 plus or minus acre parcel in Bloomington Township, Section 8 at 4851 North Kinzer Pike. And with that being said, Mr. Myers, will you please?
Madam President,
Yes, Mr. Pittsford?
let the record show Mr. Pittsford's here now.
Thank you, thank you.
Sorry, I'm
Welcome.
He's coming back from Kankakee in Illinois, had to go through Tippecanoe County, Lafayette, big parade there. Oh, no, never mind.
We're glad you're here safely. Thank you, Mr. Pittsford. Mr. Myers?
Thank you. And I'll make a quick comment. I noticed, Jerry, I don't see a mic by your desk, so if you could share with one of your partners next to you. Thank you. Okay. So this is the Rolfson rezone REZ-22-12. We've heard this a number of times now, so I will go through a quick summary of the request, and then I'll go over some of the comments that were made by the Plan Commission during the last hearing on February 21st, 2023, and then we'll jump to the written commitment. And if we have any questions about further pieces of the request and the petition, we can come back through it, because I do have a rather lengthy presentation that I used last time with a few little updates in regards to exhibits, that sort of thing. So all of the updates in the packet that are in red, those are new. So if you're following along in the packet, everything that you see in red text or with red outlines, that's new to this meeting this evening. So overall, the rezone request is a 19.34 acre parcel from RE1 to Ag RR. The purpose is to provide the appropriate zoning district for the land use classification of winery. The land use classification of winery is not permitted in the current zoning district of RE1, but it is a permitted use in the Ag RR district. The land use of winery is subject to special condition number 53, which reads only permitted on lots 5 acres or greater in the Ag RR, FR, and CR zoning districts. And with this property at 19.341 acres, that would not be an issue. If the rezone request is approved by the county commissioners, again, the Plan Commission this evening is an advisory body to the county commissioners, so any vote will be either a positive recommendation, a negative recommendation, or no recommendation to the county commissioners. And the petitioner intends to complete this planning process for the establishment of a winery on the property if they were to receive approval by the county commissioners. All applicable site plan requirements of that process, the site plan process for a winery, as well as the special conditions outlined in Chapter 802 for the winery use, must be met by the proposed change of use on the property, and the planning staff will review site plan submittals administratively, and we'll work with the petitioner as well as the other departments to ensure all requirements would be met. If the rezone is denied, the petitioner may continue to operate the property as a single-family residence, which was its previous use. There was a old farmhouse that was located on the property that was recently torn down, so the property sits vacant currently. However, the petitioner may pursue any of the available uses today as outlined in Chapter 833 of the Monroe County zoning ordinance for the RE1 zone, as long as any special conditions could be met with those specific uses. Okay, so that brings me to the updates from the last meeting, February 21st, 2023. Planning staff presented an updated staff report in that meeting with additional exhibits submitted by the petitioner, as well as letters of opposition from a few neighbors. During that meeting, the petitioner also provided a detailed presentation which covered a lot of the concerns that have been brought up in past Plan Commission meetings, including traffic concerns, as well as a conversation about a written commitment that the petitioner has prepared for this evening's meeting. The petitioner also gave some renderings of what the winery structures could look like, gave a couple options of what he was thinking in regards to a final product. The Planning Commission members also requested that the petitioner prepare that written commitment and a list of uses that the petitioner would feel comfortable with striking from the Ag RR use table to provide some certainty as to what actually would occur on the property if the rezone were to be approved at the county commissioner level. Overall, the Planning Commission voted 7-2 to continue this petition to tonight's meeting during the February 21st meeting. So here we are this evening with the updated written commitment, as well as a few other exhibits that I added in to this report and presentation from the petitioner's presentation that was displayed during the February 21st meeting. So now I will click through rather quickly a lot of these. Go ahead and scroll through to the end, which is the written commitment. And again, this is all in the packet. Okay, here we go. So here we have the written commitment draft submitted by the petitioner. In the packet, I stated that at the time of the packet's publishing, the petitioner's attorney had not had the opportunity to review the draft. And I had included that language there because I did not think that the attorney would get back to me in time because it was a close deadline. But the commitment you see in front of you that's in the packet, that's on the screen, that has been reviewed by the petitioner's attorney with a few amendments that have been made. So this is the current draft that we have before us this evening. So you'll note the petitioner includes portions of the written commitment regarding the reduction of uses that would be allowed on the property if the rezone were to go through, as well as in section 4, some additional restrictions and operational guidelines regarding the use of the property as a winery. And there's also some sections here regarding the written commitments, more of the legalese, if you will, for a document such as this that will be signed and notarized and recorded. So we can come back to this when we have questions or open to discussion. So that brings me to the planning staff's recommendation. Overall, planning staff recommends forwarding a positive recommendation to the Monroe County Board of Commissioners based on the petition's compatibility with the Monroe County Comprehensive Plan and subject to the highway engineer and MS4 coordinator reports, subject to the following conditions. 1, the petitioner submit a right-of-way activity permit. That is a condition that was carried over from the last time. The highway department requests that a right-of-way activity permit gets submitted so that they can review the location of the driveway that is to be installed or repurposed for the use of the winery. Number 2 and 3, these are new conditions of approval for this evening's meeting. Number 2 reads, the written commitment be reviewed and approved by the Monroe County Legal Department. And then number 3, the written commitment includes additional language regarding a 14-day deadline for its recording. Number 3 comes as a recommendation from the legal department since past written commitments have been recorded involving rezone petitions. And it is just a method to ensure that that commitment gets recorded and signed. And if the petitioner were to fail within that deadline to get it recorded, that planning staff would have the authority to do that within that 14-day deadline. I will now take any questions.
Do members of the Plan Commission have questions for Mr. Myers? Yes, Mr. Enright Randolph?
Just a quick, could you go back to that letter in the first page or maybe the first 2? I'm just doing a screenshot so I can kind of read it since it's new. Yeah, that's good. Let me get rid of this join as panelists. I just wanted to do a screenshot of that, so bear with me as I got promoted here.
This is also included in the packet. It's the same version.
This is the same as what's in the packet?
Yes,
Okay.
this is the same version that's in the packet. I know I put some language in the Plan Commission summary paragraph about the February 21st meeting stating that the attorney had not had the opportunity to look over it, but they actually got it in before I published the packet, but I forgot to exclude that last sentence of that paragraph.
Sorry, I thought I heard you, there was a few amendments to it, but thank you, I appreciate that.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Are there other questions for Mr. Myers from the members of the Plan Commission? No? With that being said, Mr. Rolfson, you and/or your representative have a total of 15 minutes to make your case to the members of the Plan Commission, so please come up and sign in. It's good to see you back.
Thank you. Good to be back. Okay, thank you. Thank you for this time. Thanks for having me back. I went through the packet that Drew provided, and I had a chance to a little bit more closely review some of the letters that were sent in by the neighbors after the January meeting. And I wanted to address that, kind of preface all of this with my view on what this is. And first and foremost, this is going to be a vineyard. It's going to be a farm, and that's what we're going to be doing. They're going to be growing grapes. We're going to be making wine from the grapes and allowing people to taste them. It's not a bar. It's not going to be an event venue, but we'll have some limited events there for sure. But that's not the sole purpose of it, is to be a dedicated event venue. This is not going to be Woodstock in the 1960s. You know, if we have a band there, we're not going to be setting up lots of lights and having blaring sound. That said, you know, there are economic benefits from the farm winery, and it includes increased tourism, I believe, which is a stated goal of the state and the county. Job creation, increased revenue for local businesses, and a high potential to increase the value of the neighboring properties I illustrated in my last presentation. It will be beneficial for the environment. we will promote sustainable farming practices. I just got back from a conference in Lancaster, Pennsylvania, another big wine growing region out there. And as opposed to spraying, commercial pesticides and mildew agents on there, we are going to be using a lot of homegrown, if you will, compost tea recipes, dandelions, and things like that to prevent a lot of this. So I know that there's concern. And that said, it's currently zoned for, I think it's pasturage and crops. So all those things could happen anyway. We're just going to take a sustainable approach to it. Lime Rock Ridge, with approximately 14 acres planted to vines, is going to have a significant, substantial agricultural footprint, making it compatible with the surrounding area. We don't have to worry about platting it for 15 home sites and having a lot of earth movers going out there trying to build a subdivision. I believe that's compatible use at this point in time, as long as they're at least an acre. It's going to be a farm. So at the first meeting, and I'm kind of hesitant to say this, but I just want to make clear that I received positive input, even though it's not on the record, from 2 separate households. So I'll leave it at that, and I won't take it any further, other than to say one of them suggested doing a PUD versus, the way we're doing it right now. I don't know if that's any easier or not, but overall, I think it's important to be respectful to the concerns of the neighbors. If I had concerns, I'd want to be listened to. And while it's natural to be concerned, I don't think there are really facts to support those concerns, and I'll address those right now. An increase in traffic on Bell Road and Kinzer Pike. As we discussed in the last meeting, as I presented in the last meeting, the entirety of Kinzer Pike experiences very low levels of traffic, according to the city of Bloomington. Roughly 600 cars daily travel on Kinzer Pike. And most of that is concentrated near and south of the golf course, not on the northern end. Per the city of Bloomington, accumulated accident traffic data is so low for the road that expansion and maintenance of Kinzer Pike is not even considered a priority in the budget at this point in time. Regarding Bell Road, possible cars finding their way down there, and I pushed hard with the county to allow us to put the driveways on Kinzer Pike, not on Bell Road. I didn't want to disrupt the neighbors. But I suppose it's possible somebody may not be paying attention to the signs and make a left-hand turn or right-hand turn on Bell Road. But we're going to have clearly posted winery signs, hoping to mitigate any risk of somebody making a wrong turn down Bell Road. I'll even pay for a sign that says private road, residents only. Pesticides and machinery, kind of getting back to this, current zoning laws for crops and pasturage, which means large combines or tractors needed to farm row crops are already permitted in that area. While our vineyard is going to require grooming and disease pressure mitigation, our commitment to adhere to sustainable green farming that reduces the issue of commercial spray products, favoring instead to use organically derived products, as I said, like compost tea for addressing issues like mold and insect control. Vineyard equipment is always a lot more compact. We had a tractor that was stranded on our property for a while. I think it had to have been 10 feet wide. Vineyard tractors are narrow because you want to get as many vines on a property as possible, and one we're going to get is roughly 50 inches. It's also smaller. And when we go through the vineyard, the vines are going to be, between the vines, we'll have cover crops like fescue and clover and things like that that sequester nitrogen for the plants. So that to say, we're not going to be putting there's not a lot of inputs in perennial farming versus row crop farming, which is annual. And because of the cover crops, we're not going to be producing a lot of dust in the area, which could eventually blow back to the neighbors' homes. There was a question about our farming pushing rodents toward the neighbors in one of the comments. It's not likely that our vineyard is going to do that any more or any less. I don't know that there's any data that supports the idea that rodents migrate out of a vineyard and move toward neighboring homes, but I don't think that is anything I can address, but I don't think it would be any better or worse than any other agricultural endeavor. Concern about possible increase in crime. I think it's important that, we consider crime rates in rural areas tend to be lower than in urban areas. Where it's often scenic and peaceful, and it just doesn't attract criminal activity. Further, the buffer created between the winery and the neighbors, which is about the length of a football field, is going to mitigate any risk of crime migrating, if there is any risk, over to the neighbors' homes. And while it's very unlikely that there's any risk of criminal activity, we will be installing, because we're going to have a big investment in the property, we'll be installing cameras, security systems, hiring security for events, and putting lighting around our buildings in case somebody tries to intrude. And then finally, on that point, regarding the demographic profile of guests, getting to, are we going to be attracting the type of people who qualify as criminals? The average winery visitor is older, majority falling within 35 to 54 years of age. Income, winery visitors typically have higher incomes falling in the middle to upper class, and that's typically because wine tasting is considered to be a luxury convenience. And education, winery visitors tend to be well educated with having completed college or postgraduate work. So they don't quite fit the profile of someone that's going to leave the property and ransack a neighbor's property. Inebriated guests was one of the other concerns, and I documented this in my last presentation, that tasting room visits last approximately 1 hour. People come in and they'll sample the wines, which typically amounts to less than a full glass or just at a full glass. And according to the healthline.com and the California Alcoholic Beverage Commission, that amount is metabolized by the body within an hour on a level basis. And then the last point, I guess, is annexation. So somebody was concerned that the establishment of a winery would lead to annexation, and I saw no information, anecdotal or documented or otherwise, that would say, if you put a winery in here, in 2 years, you're going to be annexed, or at any point in time. So I wanted to spend this time just to address their concerns. I know they're genuine. My feeling is they're speculative and circumstantial, but they're unsupported by any facts. So if you have any questions for me about the commitment we were willing to make or anything else.
Thank you, Mr. Rolfson.
Sure.
Do members of the Plan Commission have questions for Mr. Rolfson? No?
I have a question.
Yes, Mr. Pittsford.
Mr. Rolfson.
Yes, sir.
I was kind of thinking about this and the impact, and looking at the placement, which I'll address a little bit more later. But I noticed, as you go to the counties surrounding Marion County, as they're in transition, you see a lot of properties where development's coming out their way, and these have what used to be larger family farms become more focused on smaller agribusiness. Is that the model that you have in place, where you have sort of an agritourism, small agribusiness, where city folk can go out to the county and see what common uses for the remaining agricultural land are? Is that the model you're looking at? Are you looking more at morphing into or developing into more of an event type location? I know you said that you're not currently looking at that, but if you look down the road, 10 years when you finally have some grapes in production, are you thinking, okay, now once I get grapes in production, I'll have an opportunity to become more of an event center? Are you thinking once those grapes show up, you're going to have more of an opportunity to demonstrate what the agribusiness of running a vineyard looks like?
Yeah, so it's a good question. So one of the things that we had proposed when we were looking for land in Washington County was to work with, and I think it's a good thing to do here, is to work with the local high schools to get some of the seniors that might be in trade programs or looking to go to Purdue to get them to help out. But for what it's worth, I race cars, or at least I used to, and I'm an instructor. And one of the things I took great pleasure in was teaching people. And so when it comes to the winery, teaching, and that's why I go to ongoing education events. So to your point, it's not to have some massive event center out there. We thought about, all right, well, what if we do? And I guess, I take full responsibility for putting that on the paper to begin with. But it was suggested to me that, you might want to do this just so you can diversify your stream of income. When I started looking at it, though, even after I pulled it off so we could simplify this process here, we're not going to have room for it. We just won't have room. By the time we put in parking and get our vines planted and have driveways, there's just not going to be enough room to do anything like that. And knowing the passion with which the neighbors want to keep things peaceful, the last thing I want to do is introduce something that's going to be a thorn in anybody's side. We're actually thinking about carving out 3.5 parcels to build our home on there. And I guess that's kind of our commitment to keeping things peaceful, because I wouldn't want that in my backyard. So hindsight being 2020, yes, I guess to answer your question, that was a long way around. For me, it's going to be more about bringing people in and seeing what we could do with the neighborhood and do things that are sustainable, not a disruption. Does that?
That answers my question.
Okay.
Thank you. Mr. Ullman?
Just real quick.
Yes, sir.
You're intended, once things clear, are you intending on trying to plant and get production started in terms of the actual vines this year, or was that a year away?
Both. So I have vines on order right now. My bad, I thought this was going to be an easier process or more of a slam dunk. So I ordered some vines so we could at least get them in the ground. But the way the vines are grown is they're being bare root grown right now. They'll pull them up, and then we'll have the balance. I can still get some more, but we'll be planting about 1,800 vines an acre times 12 acres. So we've got a lot of vines going in. I have to arrange for somebody to come out with GPS planting to drop them in. So probably at least 75% would go in 2024.
Thank you.
Thank
You're
you.
welcome.
Any other questions? Okay. With that being said, we'll hear from members of the public who are in favor of this petition. If you're here, you can come to the podium and speak for 3 minutes in favor of this petition, or if you're online and would like to speak, or if you're calling in by telephone, you can press *9 to be recognized. I don't know, Tammy, if Julie or Dee had asked to ask a question. I can't really see if members were, okay. Thank you, Mr.
You're welcome.
Rolfson.
Thank you.
Thank you. So if there are members of the audience or the public who are here to speak in favor of this petition, please make yourselves known. If not, if there are members of the public who are in opposition to this petition, please come to the podium and sign in. And you'll
Just a
have,
reminder for all Plan Commission members, make sure your mic is on. There was a comment from just making sure everyone's mic is on so people on Zoom can hear.
thank you, Ms. Nestor Jelen. Just make sure the mic is on, yeah.
I couldn't hear it because my hearing's not good.
Okay.
From all that cheering when you were leaving town.
So, sir, if you would kindly state your name and the county where you
My
reside.
name is Paul Green. I live at 1265 West Bell Road, Bloomington, Indiana.
And-
This is in response to what was stated at the last meeting. I'm not against anybody, or I'm not trying to call anybody a liar or anything like that. Last meeting, he stated they would be making 60,000 gallons of wine a year. To do this, they will have to make wine all year long. This means that they would have to truck in fruit and juices to make wine at this, excuse me, and this will create more large trucks, traffic. He said at first meeting that they would be making wine 10-gallon batch tanks. But then stated in the last meeting that their tanks were going to be 3,000-gallon tanks. He said that they would have an event center and an after-hours events. This includes weddings and other events that would include loud music and more traffic. He wants to have a fair at this location, which would mean a lot of traffic that the road is not designed for. He said that he would pay for signs to be put at Sample Road to try and get people to use Sample Road to get to the winery. This will help, this will not help, because in today's world, everyone uses GPS. And GPS, and it will take them down the old 37 to Bales Road and Kensler Pike to get to the winery. He stated that their reported accident on Monroe County records for that part of Kensler Pike, this is a problem, true, because area is in the city, and not that there has been 4 accidents in the last year, because I've seen them myself. He said that the wind comes from the southwest in that area, and it does at times, but the wind on this hillside blows in directions at a lot of other times.
Thank you.
And that includes this week.
Thank you.
They have come from every direction possible up there.
Thank you, Mr. Green. We have your statement and also the statements from before. Thank you for coming tonight.
I got one more thing, if you don't mind.
I'll allow it.
When I took the petition around and had it signed, I got 23 or 24 signatures. I think it's up to a couple more than that. All but 2 could not wait to sign the petition against the winery. They did not want the winery in there. They didn't care about the zoning part, but they did not want a winery in that location.
Thank you, Mr.
Thank you.
Green. Thank you for coming tonight. Is there anyone else here in the room who would like to speak in opposition to this petition? If so, please come to the podium and sign in. If you're on Zoom, please raise your virtual hand, or if you're calling in by telephone, press *9 to be recognized. And I'll need help from staff to see if there's anyone calling in or raising their hand on Zoom. With that being said, Mr. Rolfson, you have another 5 minutes rebuttal.
Yeah, and thank you for this time. So I'm a little taken aback by, the comment of making wine year-round. Making wine, I suppose, could be a year-long endeavor based on what your markets are. What we're going to be doing is making wine from seasonally grown grapes. We're not Oliver Winery. We don't have 200,000-gallon tanks where we've got futures contracts against Moscato wines where we can fill those up 4 to 5 or 6 times a year to be making wine. I never say anything about 10-gallon batches because it's just not economically feasible to make a 10-gallon batch of wine. Our tanks that come in may start out at 1,500 to 2,000 gallons each. As our need grows, and I think the reference to 60,000 gallons of wine may be the upper end of the limit that I said that we could possibly someday in the future be producing 25,000 cases of wine a year. 25,000 cases of wine, I won't go through the math, but that's equal to 60,000 gallons of finished wine. But even at that, that is most likely going to be produced within that 4-month production window that normally takes place. With regard to the way the wind blows in the wintertime, the wind does come from the northwest, northeast sometimes. That's how we get a polar vortex. In the summertime, the prevailing winds almost always come out of the southwest. And so the wind is blowing in a north-south fashion, so that during winemaking season, the gentlemen and the other neighbors are not going to be intruded upon by any smells wafting from the winery into their neighborhood, because the wind at that time of year simply is not going to be blowing in that direction. And you could go to Weather Underground and find data on that going back years, because there's plenty of weather stations. We're now one of them that will show you the wind direction on any given day at any given hour. So it's all out there. But that's really all I wanted to say. Was a little confused about the numbers that were coming out there. The data that I used to support my discussion about traffic came from the reports published by the Monroe County Highway Department, and it came from the city of Bloomington.
Thank you so much, Mr.
You're welcome.
Rolfson.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll turn now to discussion among members of the Plan Commission and/or a motion. Mr. Pittsford.
After the last meeting, I had some concerns that came to my mind, or thoughts that came to my mind, not really concerns. But one of the thoughts that I kind of hit on was, we're looking at a rezone, and the primary concern for a rezone is the best, highest use for a piece of property. Does rezoning fit the comprehensive plan? Does the rezone create an opportunity, in this instance, to reduce the intensity of development in a particular area? And if so, if the zoning is right according to the best, highest use and what the comp plan allows, are we always going to get into the nitty-gritty of restricting the petitioner's use according to what individuals either on this board or in the community at large think best for that neighborhood? Or are we going to say this zoning is best, and how the petitioner uses it under this zoning is up to them, and their sensitivity to the people around them and to the common needs of the county will be up to them to determine? I don't know why we're suddenly so concerned when we can move to a less intense use. We've asked a lot of this petitioner, but then I also was noticing tonight that in this area, just to the south is rural transition. This is going from estate residential to Ag RR with rural transition just below it, okay? Then, if you look, conservation residential is just to the east of it. Across 69 southeast, you have employment center. So everything around this seems to be hinting at this Ag RR use is appropriate there. Why we're overlooking that and instead looking at restricting the use that a petitioner could have by moving to a rezone that's appropriate is beyond me. That's all I want to say.
Are there other, Mr. Ullman?
As most people in this room, or at least on this board, know, I'm new to the county, and I'm the extension educator in agriculture and natural resources. And even though I'm new to the county, it didn't take very long of being here in Monroe County to quickly learn that Monroe County's one of their specialty is the just general diversity we have in agriculture as a county. Some counties specialize in row crops, some counties specialize in animal production. Monroe County has a little bit of everything. And ironically enough, today is National Ag Day. And the day that's celebrated to, bring precedence to how great and important agriculture is in our communities. And I think that this zone, as was just explained, is a great opportunity to bring agriculture closer to the urban and get the urban community more connected with the rural agriculture community right in their backyard. Monroe County, 80% of the land sits outside of the city of Bloomington, but yet 80% of our population sits inside of the city of Bloomington. And I think that this is just a perfect opportunity to bring that 80% of the population, or 80% of the land into that 80% of the community. And I just, as agricultural commodities go, vineyards and wineries are about as low impact as they come, especially when you look at crops and pastures being already accessible. And from the erosion perspective and the application perspective in agricultural management, what's already allowed is a much major impact than what we are asking to be allowed. And similar commentary, I see no reason why we're so held up on this.
Thank you, Mr. Ullman. Commissioner Thomas?
Yeah, I just want to thank everyone for their comments and the emails that were sent and all the work by the petitioner. I agree that a vineyard is a great agricultural use, but I think the concern that the neighbors have is related to the event center. And they've been there. They've had the quiet enjoyment of their property for quite some time. And I think that's the issue. If this were just, hey, we want to change this to Ag RR and have a vineyard or pasture or whatever it is, this would be a no-brainer. But it's the event center. And that's what I'm hearing from folks. And I think we have to respect the people who live in that area and their needs. So thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Thomas. First, Mr. Enright Randolph, then Councilwoman Munson, and then Mr. Morris.
Well, I really respect this dialogue and appreciate your comment, and it made me feel compelled to make a comment myself. And I had asked about the uses. The operational outline is kind of not really anything I was advocating for, but I felt like maybe that could help move this along and even address some of the concerns that the neighbors and the public has expressed. But my reason of looking at the uses is because we've been in this midst since 2016 of creating first it was a consolidated development ordinance. There could be like 5 other names, but now we're calling it the county development ordinance. And planning has indicated that this seems to be in line with what the comp plan and the new zoning ordinance is going to look like, but we don't know what all those uses are quite yet. And I've been a little more hesitant to want to support rezones as we're in the midst of this new ordinance rewrite. So no, once we have a new ordinance, I would rather just see straightforward rezones if it's applicable and it looks like that's a good place for that rezone to occur. But one reason I did look at the uses is because we're right here at the cusp of adopting a new ordinance where this use could be permitted. So I urge that, we take caution with rezones. I even suggested a long time ago we take a moratorium on them until we do adopt the CDO, but there's hesitation on that as well. I even made a statement once that I wasn't going to entertain or favor any rezone, and then someone was gracious enough to come to me and say, everything on the agenda is a rezone today. And I happened to make that comment during the first petition. So I really appreciate you bringing that up, Mr. Pittsburgh, and I agree that, we should just kind of do these straightforward, but looking at a comprehensive plan for almost 6 years now and not understanding exactly where the ball's going to fall makes me a little hesitant just to kind of do straightforward rezones without maybe limiting some of the uses. But that's just my comment.
Thank you, Mr. Enright Randolph. Councilperson Munson?
Thank you. I wanted to just offer the comment that I appreciate the neighbors stepping up to explain to the owner their concerns, and that I appreciate the owner making a series of concessions and limiting uses to address those concerns. I think this is a good balance of how people can work together and live together as good neighbors and in a good working environment. So I appreciate both positions. Thank you.
Mr. Morris?
Yeah, as everyone said tonight, I appreciate everybody's comments. I think it's given me a lot of perspective, and I appreciate that. I think the bottom line for me is this is next to a residential area where we have quite a few people opposed to it, and I appreciate the compromises that everyone has tried to come to, but I worry when we start talking about types of music being played, hours of operation, number of events per month, that's really going to become challenging for the county to enforce, for the petitioner to adhere to, and really for the neighbors as well, if we're getting into having to count the number of events per month. So with this being right next to a residential area, this is something that if this is rezoned and changed, it's not something that can easily be changed back. So this is a big decision to me to make this kind of decision.
Thank you, Mr. Morris. Mr. Garatas?
Yeah, I've gone back and forth on this. I've been pretty quiet about it because I really thought the petitioner was going through and he was addressing questions of the Plan Commission. I think he addressed questions and remarks of the staff on multiple occasions and of the neighbors. We've got the Highway Department, we've got the MS4 operator, we've got staff, and the comprehensive plan, as Mr. Pittsford had said, is all in agreement that this is a good use for this property. I do respect the neighbors, but if we're going to go into doodle poll zoning, then why do we have a comprehensive plan, and why do we have any sort of, because that's what I'm hearing, that we're leaning so much on the neighbors' input, which is important, but it's not the only factor. And that's an unpopular thing to say, but I'm sorry, that's why we have the comprehensive plan. Let's just get rid of it and doodle poll everything. There are neighbors to almost everything that happens in Monroe County. That is the way it is. So nobody's going to embrace any change. The irony I thought on this, and I may have mentioned it to one of the Plan Commission members, that if this were an agro reserve and we wanted to rezone it to RE1, it would have had all kinds of problems. Now we're in RE1, which is typically a higher intensity use, and we want to back it down to agro reserve, and we're having problems with it. I don't understand why. I think that this is a very good placeholder. This type of use, we've been educated that it's typically a 30-year time span. They're going to have some time up front for investment to get the juice on the property. I'm learning as we go here. I do think that the petitioner's addressed remarks, maybe not totally to the satisfaction of the neighbors, but I think he has explained them. He's had meetings with the Highway Department. He's been in constant contact with staff through the whole process. And I just don't know why, when we look at what our charge is as Plan Commission members, that we wouldn't forward this on to the Board of County Commissioners with a favorable recommendation with the 3 conditions that staff has put forth. And I sorry about some of the harsh language as far as how we approach petitions with neighbors and opinions, but that's why we're here, because we've got to make the decisions. So thank you for the indulgence, and I think it's a great project.
Thank you, Mr. Garatas. Ms. Owens?
Thank you. I'm curious about the 13 acres that was just recently rezoned. right next door there. And it said in the packet that it had something to do with splitting it into two pieces. Can somebody enlighten me on that?
Yes, so if you look on the screen, the top left graph here, the current zoning map, there is a large parcel that's actually 134 acres that recently was rezoned from RE1 to Agricultural Rural Reserve. And it's this larger parcel here that I'm highlighting with my cursor. It's not showing on the map yet that it's Ag-RR, but it did receive approval from the county commissioners. It's in the packet, and it's touched on, let's see, on page 8. And it's located at 1300 West Bell Road. It was rezoned from RE1 to Ag-RR in July of 2021, and the intention behind that rezone was to perform a 2-lot sliding scale subdivision. The Planning Commission voted 7-0 to forward that petition with a positive recommendation with no conditions, and the Board of Commissioners granted the rezone by a vote of 3-0 on October 20th, 2021.
Okay, thank you very much. I've listened over the course of these meetings, of course, to everything. I've read the materials, and it seems to me like a small local business owner has tried very hard to take every consideration in. Talking about potentially building and living on the same property, I think is also important, because one has to, you don't want disruptions in your own front yard, much less everybody else's backyard. So I think that the petitioner has been over backwards to try and address everything while asking us to send this property back to Ag Rural Reserve. I don't think that's a bad idea. Thank you.
And I'd like an opportunity to say something as well. Number one, you know, it is frequently stated that we need more housing. I hear it all the time. We need more types of housing. We need more RE1. We need more single-family housing. We need more multi-family housing, and this is zoned for that, RE1. So it seems to me that the neighbors have come in force, and they are opposed to this. It's zoned for residential. I think I'm going to vote against it, because the neighbors are against it, and it's zoned for residential. And there's been an often claimed need for more residential housing. So I'll be voting no on this. Yes, Mr. Ullman.
I'd like to add a comment to the commentary that was made about it's not so much the agricultural side of it, but the event center. That is what's the higher concern on this particular use. And based on its current zoning, RE1, it's completely permitted parks and playground. And I don't have official stats to go off of, but it's been my experience that parks and playgrounds usually have large parking lots and include large number of people, and oftentimes host events and celebrations and can be rented for various parties, or maybe it's groups that are hosting annual meetings or various events, and comes with plenty of noise and various other concerns that were made. And, you know, if the property owner wanted to instead build a park with a large playground there that could service 200 people, he's within his rights currently, but instead he wants to build a venue that he's going to cap at less than 100 people and host people indoors with less volume, exterior volume. And, you know, I think that being caught up on that comment is also negligent based on what's already permitted on the zone. So,
Thank you, Mr. Ullman. Okay, is there a motion?
I have one final comment.
Yes, Mr. Myers?
There's been some discussion about subdivision options, both from the Plan Commission members and the petitioner, that I was not aware of, but I just want to offer some clarity regarding the subdivision control ordinance. This property is currently 19 acres. As it stands, being zoned RE1, it would not have a subdivision option. The RE1 zone does allow for smaller lot sizes. However, it does need to have sewer to subdivide. If it's serviced by septic, it has to have a minimum of 10 acres each lot. So at 19 acres, they would just be shy of 20 acres to create 2 lots. The sliding scale subdivision does have a little bit more flexibility in the subdivision options. It is only permitted in the Ag RR, the FR, and the CR zones. But with 19 acres, the property owner would be allowed to subdivide to create 2 lots. And one of those lots would have to be 55% or more of the total, and one lot would have to be, or not have to be, excuse me, could be as small as 2.5 acres. So I just wanted to provide some
And
context there.
I wasn't asserting that subdivisions would be able to be built there, but that one type of home could be built there, which it's currently zoned for.
Yes.
So thank you. So if there's a motion, Mr. Garatas?
I can make a motion, yes, ma'am. Drew, would you put the 3 conditions that staff put on the screen at the beginning of the meeting, please? Thank you. In the matter of REZ-22-12, this is the Rolfson rezone from RE1 to Agro Reserve. This is the final hearing, located at 4851 North Kinzer Pike. I move that we send this petition on with a positive recommendation to the Monroe County Executive Board of County Commissioners, with a positive recommendation based on the staff report, the fact that it is in line with the comprehensive plan, and with the following 3 conditions. That 1, the petitioner submit a right-of-way activity permit to the Monroe County Highway Department, that a written commitment be reviewed and approved by the Monroe County Legal Department, and that 3, the written commitment include all additional language regarding a 14-day deadline for its recording, and that would be after the county commissioners approve it.
So a written commitment can be recorded prior to the commissioner's decision. However, in consult with the legal department, we've been starting to request that written commitments include a 14-day deadline. That way that there is some surety that those documents get recorded in a timely manner.
I just want clarity on the 14 days starts from what point?
Oh, the 14 days would start from the approval or whatever recommendation is made by the county commissioners.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
That's it?
Okay, great. Would you please call the roll?
I'll second the motion.
Oh, yes. Thank you.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to send a favorable recommendation to REZ-22-12, the Rolfson rezone from RE1 to Ag RR, with 3 conditions: that the petitioner submit a right-of-way activity permit to the Highway Department, that a written commitment be reviewed and approved by the Monroe County Legal Department, and that the written commitment include additional language regarding a 14-day deadline from the county commissioner's decision for its recording. A vote in favor is a vote to send a positive recommendation. Cheryl Munson,
Yes.
Edward Ullman,
Yes.
Dee Owens,
Yes.
Jerry Pittsburgh,
Since the comp plan has already spoken on this, I'll just echo, yes.
Julie Thomas,
No.
Margaret Clemens,
No?
Trondon Ray Randolph,
Yes.
Brittany Garatas,
Yes.
Jeff Morris.
No.
Okay, the motion is 6-3 to send a favorable recommendation to the Board of Commissioners.
And do you know when this will be heard at the Board of Commissioners, Ms. Nestor Jelen?
I can answer that.
It has 90 days from today's vote to make it to the commissioners, but we will get it on the schedule. And I believe Drew has a list of neighbors that he will be able to notify of the date. And Commissioner Thomas has her hand raised on the topic as well.
Yeah, I just thank you for the question. I just want to add that typically it will come to a work session first, and then we'll set the date for the hearing. At the work session, we don't take public comment. So folks can watch that way as well. Thanks.
Mr. Myers, just anything to tell Mr. Green before he leaves, or Mr. Rolfson, what to expect next?
Sure, thank you.
Yes.
Yes, so the next steps, as just mentioned, would be going to the county commissioners. So there will be a work session. Usually staff is able to prepare an application for that work session within a couple weeks. So I will be sending out notices to all those that have been interested in this petition about that work session. Again, as stated, the work session operates very similar to the Plan Commission admin meeting, in which you can attend or you can watch online, but there's typically not public comment heard during that time. At the work session, the county commissioners will deliberate and tell staff when they would like to hear that petition again, and that will be at the regular session. All county commissioner sessions are start at 10 a.m. The regular session starts at 10 a.m. on Wednesdays, and the work session follows thereby after. There's a short recess, 5 to 10 minutes between the two. So I'll be in communication. If you have any questions, you can call our office or send me an email, and I'll be in touch.
So thank you all for participating in this deliberation. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, we move on now to new business. Items 1 and 2, PUO-23-2 and PUD-23-2, North Park PUD Outline Plan Amendment Number 5, change to Section 8, Street and Alternative Transportation Guidelines. This is the preliminary hearing, and there's been a request to waive the final hearing. And the petitioner is Monroe County Redevelopment Commission and Kreider and Kreider Incorporated, care of Daniel Butler, Bynum and Faneuil and Associates. So Ms. Crecelius, if you'd be so kind to review the case with us.
Yes, thank you. Okay, so the petition site is located in Bloomington Township, sections 19, 27, and 30. The petitioner, as stated earlier, is the Monroe County Redevelopment Commission and Kreider Inc. They are requesting to amend the North Park Planned Unit Development Ordinance and has submitted a development plan for the construction of Hunter Valley Road extension from North Curry Pike to Hunter Valley Road. The outline plan request is to change the specific street construction guidelines and the required street connections of the North Park Plan Unit Development Ordinance. The development plan proposed, which is PUD-23-2, is specifically for the construction of what I'm going to refer to as the Hunter Valley Road extension. The construction plans under the development plan include approximately 2,500 feet of roadway, including a proposed bridge. The majority of this area on the current zoning map, zoned dark red, is the North Park PUD. So the highway engineer has been reviewing these plans with the petitioner's representative with Bynum, Faneuil and Associates. And they have agreed to the road construction plans as drafted and shown in a link and within the exhibits of the staff report. So here on the screen, these are the specific parts of the North Park PUD that once constructed, the connection would satisfy the following requirements of the North Park ordinance. So the comprehensive plan for this area is the Monroe County Urbanizing Area, and it identifies this, the districts in this area as 3 different ones, which is mixed use in the kind of a bright orange, open space in the dark green, and quarry landscape in a darker brown color. So the site contains a bridge crossing, a regulated floodplain. The floodplain area is designated as required open space or linear park. It's also referred to as vegetated conservation area within the North Park ordinance. The North Curry Pike area was platted within the North Park Type D and E administrative subdivision in 2011. The properties are currently vacant and are designated as a use district A, which contains multiple different permitted use areas. So the first group of changes to the Section 8 Street and Alternative Transportation Guidelines of the ordinance is specifically relating to the construction of this Hunter Valley extension and the development plan. There are 4 proposed changes. So the first is to the dedicated right-of-way required under the ordinance, and they're proposing to reduce it. So the standard requires a minimum of 120 feet for the entire roadway area. They are proposing to allow a variation of right-of-way dedicated from as small as 60 feet up to 120 feet. Within their plans, the smallest that they do actually end up utilizing is roughly 75 feet. The second part is reclassification of roadway. So the North Park ordinance designated this connector as a minor arterial boulevard / secondary arterial. The Monroe County Highway Engineer, Paul Satterley, using the Monroe County Thoroughfare map and the design of this road and its location and use, would like to see this designated as a major collector and held to those standards of a major collector. Third is the removal of street trees. So the North Park ordinance requires that street trees are planted on both sides of the roadway. They're proposing to strike this from the ordinance and remove any of the street tree requirement for this connector. The last one is the reduction of speed. The North Park ordinance requires that roadways are designed for a minimum of 40 miles per hour. This design, specifically because of the curve, it was explored, but the curve has created a design that would really only allow 30 miles per hour. So here in Exhibit 3 of your staff report, we have an overview of the construction plan. Now you can find your detailed construction plans in the exhibits, but this is just a quick overview that we can see. So one of the first areas of note would be this precast bridge that would cross Stouts Creek. This area would have 120 feet of dedicated right-of-way. This area is flood zone AE, and the development plan will require a local floodplain permit. The next section would have a 90 feet of dedicated right-of-way. The next part along the extension would be the smallest area of right-of-way that we would see is 75 feet of dedicated right-of-way. And this would allow for structures that are closer to the road, allowed to continue to exist and not be located within the right-of-way. The next portion of the road goes to 90 feet of dedicated right-of-way. All along, on the north side of the road extension, there is a 4-foot sidewalk, and on the south side of the road extension is an 8-foot side path. So the next group of changes to the North Park Ordinance Street and Construction Guidelines is the removal of 3 road connections, and I'm going to go through each of these road connections individually. We have quite a few comments on these in the report, so I really just tried to pull out maybe the most pertinent information to have to review here for each road connection on screen. So the petitioner has identified that this road connection wasn't intended to access West Arlington Road, and that is new information from what we have been presenting so far. We had understood the ordinance as being required to connect to West Arlington. They've discovered that really the language is that it should be stubbed or in a cul-de-sac. So the petitioner's representative comments, which they absolutely can expand on during their time, is that construction is constructed prior to development plan approval of 75% of the acreage located in Use District D. So this area would not be able to be, the road, this proposed image of a stub ending in a cul-de-sac would have to be constructed. The next portion is that they've identified that approximately 47% of the acreage is buildable, and that it's an area of concern for this property due to the location and amount of non-buildable, and that removal of this road connection would allow for more of that buildable area be allowed for development. Okay, the next removal of road connection is from North Stone Branch Drive to Stony Brook Boulevard. Some feedback from the Plan Review Committee was to get specific comments from the highway engineer. So Paul Setterly had stated that this connection would encourage cut-through traffic between Curry Pike and State Road 46 and Arlington Road, and that cut-through traffic has negative impact on subdivisions, including higher volumes of traffic, higher volumes of truck traffic, and increased speeds. He states that the extension of Curry Pike and Hunter Valley Road is designed to accommodate this traffic between Arlington Road and Curry Pike and State Road 46, including trucks. The last road connection that would be removed is the North Stone Branch Drive to Hunter Valley Road. This is a looping design going south on North Stone Branch Drive. So the highway engineer had stated that the loop road that would connect Stone Branch Drive to the east end of Hunter Valley Road, that the original purpose of the roadway was to provide access to the adjacent property, and that the current property owners are interested in using it in a different way. There have been environmental studies in this area that have shown that there would be great difficulty in constructing a road through this previously quarried site. So upon staff review, we do have a recommendation relating to this last removal of the road. So we, planning and highway staff are supportive of removing these road connections. We are requesting that the petitioner develop language that would require a future developer to construct a cul-de-sac at the south end of North Stone Branch Drive instead of continuing on into that open quarry area. At some point, just like the rest of the North Park ordinance, there would be a threshold of development and a cul-de-sac would have to be built, and that would be for specifically to assist with access of emergency vehicles to be able to turn around and kind of finish this area. Okay, so the Plan Review Committee saw this on March 9th. So a few of their questions were, why were the roads really needed? So we did some digging into the North Park ordinance history, and what we really found, the most detailed information we found is included as Exhibit 7 of your packet is a memo from Bill Williams, who was the Director of Highway at the time of adopting the North Park PUD, where they go through and they identify what connector roads are needed and what standards they should be held to. And this is reflective of a lot of the very specific language that we see in the North Park ordinance now. So from what we can tell from this exhibit from his memo is that it was all potential connector roads that might be needed were identified and included. The second comment was asking for specific comments from the highway engineer, which we've reviewed. And the last one was to explore retiring the West Hunter Valley Road road name. This is a planned commission action to retire or adopt a new road name. So staff has brought that forward. Currently, we have it as a condition. Previously, we had not found any negative information that would limit or prohibit us from possibly retiring West Hunter Valley Road. We spoke with the Highway Department Director, Lisa Ridge, at our department coordination meeting, and they were in favor of extending North Curry Pike to Arlington Road. That being said, as of today, we have received a letter from the Monroe County Historic Board of Preservation, which you have all received now either digitally or as a paper copy, enlightening us with the history of this road name and providing an alternative review. I believe our senior planner, Drew Myers, who staffs the Historic Preservation Board, has stated that there would probably be somebody here to expand on this, and I'll show their letter and the map that they've included in just one moment. So the Plan Review Committee did not forward any recommendation. Staff does see this amendment to the PUD as being consistent with the comprehensive plan. Okay, so here is their letter. I will not read it word for word. You guys have had that for a little while now, but they do shed some light on the Hunter Valley character, the specific person, Morton C. Hunter, who was an American Civil War hero, and their ties to this region of the county and their relevance to the history of the quarrying in this area. They've also included a historic map that kind of really outlines that this whole area was referred to as Hunter Valley. So with that new information, we did not necessarily have the time to change our recommendation, so I will leave that up to the Plan Commission to discuss among themselves. So as written in the staff packet, our recommendation for PUO 23-2 and PUD 23-2 is that staff recommends approving the waiver of final hearing and forwarding a positive recommendation to the county commissioners for the plan unit outline plan amendment and the development plan request based on the findings of fact subject to the Monroe County Highway and Drainage Area reports, with the following condition: that the petitioner apply for a road name change to retire West Hunter Valley Road in exchange for the extension of North Curry Pike. Just to include, in that letter from the historic board, they wrote in favor of actually extending West Hunter Valley to State Road 46 instead of North Curry Pike. Does anybody have any questions?
Do members of the Plan Commission have questions for Ms. Crescelius? Mr.
And
Pittsford?
I'll just, real quickly, I just want to clarify the recommendation. So the Plan Commission will have a final decision tonight if they choose to waive the final hearing on the PUD, which is the actual development plan for the road connection from Hunter Valley to Curry. The PUO, which is the recommendation for getting rid of the road connections, the 3 road connections that Ann went through, and also allowing for those changes to the development plan, such as the right-of-way width and things like that, that goes to the county commissioners. So 2 recommendations that will be coming out tonight. One is a recommendation to the commissioners, and the other would be a decision by the Plan Commission for that development plan.
Mr. Pittsford?
Well, point of clarity, I guess I was having a difficulty of hearing that, and I'm sorry to jump in, but
I couldn't hear it either.
I was wondering if anyone could kind of summarize what was said.
Yes, so
Sorry, is that,
I.
can you repeat that, Ann? Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, and I'll go ahead and update the slide so it's a little easier. I'm not sure why I didn't notice this until now. So we do have 2 motions in front of you tonight. One is the recommendation for the plan, the PUD amendment. That goes to the county commissioners. You have a decision before you if you don't vote to waive a final hearing for either one of these, is to vote for the development plan only for the construction of the road. So they are choosing to bring both of those together at the same time. I will alter this slide right now and make it a little bit more clear for when a motion is ready as to what would be needed.
Thank you, Ms. Crescelius. Mr. Pittsford?
Do we know which side of the war he was fighting on? I'm assuming the north, because the winners get to write history, but since it said hero, I figured he must have been on the northern side. Just want to clarify.
Are there other questions for planning staff from members of the Plan Commission? And I don't see Ms. Owens or Commissioner Thomas. Okay, well then the petitioner combined has 15 minutes. If you would kindly come to the podium, sign in, state your name, in what county you reside.
My name is Jeff Fanio of Bynum Fanio Associates. I reside actually in Brown County now, but my office is here in Bloomington, just a few blocks north on Walnut Street. With me is Steve Kreider of Logan Land Development, and Kreider, and AJ Willis of my office. What brought us here tonight is that there was a strong interest in extending Hunter Valley Road to Arlington from its termination at Stone Branch and Curry Pike intersection. It's a high priority road for the county, and for that reason, Steve came to us to design this road and bring it forward for approval. During this design process, we got into the nitty-gritty part of the design, and we realized that there are certain topographic constraints that do not allow this road to be designed to the arterial status and the 40-mile-an-hour design speed. One of the reasons was the 200-foot radius curve at Arlington that was brought up. The other is that the existing topography has slopes of about 15% existing, we're able to flatten those slopes down to 9%, but again, that reduces the AASHTO design speed to 30 miles an hour. Those are two changes that we got into. The other issues the right-of-way widths, and the PUD said we need 120 feet of right-of-way, and that was just a blanket statement for all the arterials that were in this PUD. When we got into this, again, we got topographic issues that we have to deal with. To the north, once you get on the east side of Stouts Creek, you have high walls with the existing Hoadley Quarry, and then it tapers to where we are at grade. On the south side, we have a business, an interiors business that built very close to the existing roadway, and if we maintained more than a 60-foot right-of-way, we would have to take the building and relocate a business. And it wasn't necessary to get all the infrastructure required by the highway engineer in. We can do the 14-foot lanes, we can do the curb and gutters, the tree plots, multi-purpose path, and the sidewalk within the right-of-ways that we have, and still not keep from having to take that building. The last thing we're asking is the street trees. That the street trees are no longer allowed in what we used to call a tree plot. It's now called a buffer. They want it beyond the sidewalks on the back side. Well, we're going through a heavily wooded area, and we would have to remove trees to be able to plant new trees. So we're asking for not having to plant new trees along the backside of the walk and the multi-purpose path. As we were bringing this design to the staff and to the highway department, they asked if there was other things in the PUD ordinance that we found troubling. And so we went through and started looking at some of the road connections that have been mentioned tonight. The first was there's when 75% of the development occurs, we have to make a stub to the north property. This area has pretty steep slopes. There's not a whole lot of developable ground. The only reason we'd ever build a road up there is when it's time to build some homes up there, there's not going to be many. So it didn't seem right that we ought to tie building that road to the rest of the site that's more developable. That ought to stand on its own. It will be built, it just won't be tied to 75% of the development to be built. The access to Stony Brook, we brought a petition here for a cottage project in, I think it was 08 or 2010, I can't remember exactly. And Stony Brook neighbors remonstrated in force, and probably rightfully so, because they were concerned about traffic going through their neighborhood. At that time, the Hunter Valley Road extension wasn't being proposed, and there was a probability that people would go through their neighborhood. And now that we have Hunter Valley being proposed to extend, the necessity of making that connection and making that neighborhood less desirable with our traffic cutting through, it would be a possibility to remove that from the requirements. It's something that will keep that neighborhood what it is today without having to make this connection. In addition, with Hunter Valley being extended, we'll be able to get through our property and to Arlington Valley and to State Road 46. Stony Brook can make a short travel distance to where we connect to Arlington Valley and come through if they want to, but realistically, their direct line of travel is going to be on Arlington Valley into 17th Street and into Bloomington, or out Arlington Valley to 46 and towards Ellisville. So it's really not a connection that's necessary, and it'll keep that neighborhood as it is today. The other road connection would be the road that through the property the county purchased. And at the time of the PUD in 05, the approved uses in that area was hotels, offices, I think some restaurants, high intensity use. So we put in a looping drive to be able to serve all that area. And now that the county's purchased that property, the proposed use for that land is changing. It's going to be a less intense use. There's no need to fill in quarries and disrupt the existing foliage that's there, and we can leave it more in a natural state by not building that road. So that is the other reason, that's the reason we're asking for that to be removed. Would be a county responsibility, and it's not necessary any longer because times have changed. Looking back on it, we have 18 years since we got this PUD approved, and things have changed, and the development that occurs today is much different than what we were planning on in '05. I believe that hits the, they mentioned the cul-de-sac at the end of the property parcel or use area A. It will provide a turnaround for emergency vehicles, and anybody that goes down into that area, they'll be able to turn around and come back out without having to back up and do a 3-point turn. So that's the reason that cul-de-sac was requested at that location. That's all I have right now. Steve, do you have anything? I'll be happy to answer any questions you have.
Thank you so much. Do members of the Plan Commission have questions? Yes, Mr. Pittsford?
First of all, good to see you again, Jeff. It's been a little while.
Yeah, it has.
I thought maybe you had really left town, but you just gone to Brown County. I was really concerned about the removal of the trees, so I certainly want to begin by saying I appreciate you explaining that. I am still a little bit concerned, but I'm going to defer to the wisdom of street designers on that speed limit being reduced to 30 miles an hour, and hope that some sort of calming mechanism will be included in the design that's not a speed bump. Because when I look at that sweep of the road and without any visual cues to slow traffic, I'm afraid that can become an issue. But I always reserve the right to be wrong, because when they covered that in English teacher school, I skipped that day. So anyway, the real question is the existing trees. How are you going to select the trees that are going to be retained, and how will they be incorporated into the road design? We know now that they can't be set into that, what we used to refer to as like the planter plot between the roadway and the roadway gutter and the sidewalk. So now how are we going to incorporate these trees so that there's a visual appeal, that there's a calming effect, and we save the right trees that don't drop stuff like the sap off of tulip poplars, which to me would not be real popular.
Well, what we've done is we've established the construction limits, and the construction limits go beyond the backside of the sidewalk in the multi-purpose path. On the north side, not very far, because we tie in pretty quick. On the south side, where we're close to that interior designs building where Tim Vest has his office, there is more of a slope. I don't know if you've been out there, but there's quite a bit of fall from the existing roadway down to his building. And we're lowering the grade there a couple of feet to limit how far out we have to grade. But we tried to limit the amount of construction limit area so that anything beyond that stays. Anything within the construction limits where we're disturbing is removed. So there'll be a demarcation, it'll be staked out, the silt fence will be placed there, and no disturbance will go beyond that silt fence.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions for Mr. Faneuil? No? Okay, do you have one, council member?
I do have a question, but I'm not sure it's for you, Mr. Faneuil. It has to do with the renaming of Hunter Valley Road. And I didn't know that we would see a letter tonight from the Historic Preservation Board. And I'm very happy to see their detailed information, because I was going to make an appeal to everyone here that we need to conserve the historic character of the regions where we are working, and certainly Curry Pike, North Curry Pike running east-west. Is that something that is particularly appealing to people who do know their cardinal directions? Hunter Valley Road means a lot to the people who live in the area. And it means a lot to people who have been part of Monroe County for a long time. So I don't know who makes the decisions on this.
I might start with an answer, and then whoever can finish up. But
Okay.
the reason why this was originally brought is, first of all, I didn't know about this person. I'd like to read more about him. But if you go along, Morris Pike at Hillside, and then you got Country Club,
Yep.
Winslow, Rogers. You have all these roads that have different names, but they're all on a line. It's really hard to give people directions sometimes. So I thought that was a good idea to make the change before this came up. But my client has no desire to make the name change if that's the desire of the Plan Commission.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? Okay, and I can't see if Dee or Commissioner Thomas have questions. Okay, so thank you, sir. Next, we'll hear from members of the public who are in favor of this petition. If so, if you're here in this room, please come to the podium and sign in to speak in favor of this petition. Or if you're online on a Zoom call, please raise your virtual hand or press *9 on a telephone if you're calling in to be able to speak in favor of this petition. If there's anyone here in the room who is in opposition to this petition, please come to the podium and sign in, and then state your name and the county in which you reside.
Got a long name, so part of I've dealt with it my whole life.
So you'll have 3 minutes to speak.
Okay, thank you very much. So my name is Devin Blankenship, and I'm a resident of Monroe County. And would you be able to bring up the map again? So I am on the Historic Preservation Board of Review. So basically, the only point that I want to talk about is the road name. So you have the letter there from Polly Root Sturgeon, and she's not able to be here tonight. I will be followed by Mrs. Debbie Reed, who has a lot more of the limestone history than I'm able to provide. But when we discussed it yesterday, we discussed all those same points, that Hunter Valley is a significant name, not only within Monroe County, but outside of Monroe County for those who know limestone. And Mrs. Reed will cover that a lot more significantly than I will. One of the other big things was that technically that stretch of roadway runs east-west. So West Hunter Valley Road is a more accurate name than North Curry Pike. One of the things in looking at the history of Monroe County is obviously Curry is a significant name in Monroe County, so we want to make sure that we honor that name as well. And as it has been on the west side for a very long time, we're not suggesting any of that go away. And luckily we have their name other places as well, in our county buildings, in our car dealerships. We get to see it. So we wanted to make sure to preserve the Hunter Valley name as best as possible and make it clear with the directional, with the east-west, that it currently aligns with that. It looks like that roadway was deliberately designed to align with Hunter Valley, so it's not a mistake that we're addressing tonight, that the two roadways align. We had mentioned in the letter the recommendation that it be named all the way from Arlington Road to the intersection. And I would argue, if that makes you uncomfortable, take it all the way to the roundabout. You'll notice the roundabout, everything comes in at its interesting angle, which is why there's lovely roundabouts there now. All the development in that area is named after limestone. All those road names seem to relate to the limestone industry. So the name Hunter Valley goes in more alignment with that than the Curry Pike name, because Curry Pike used to terminate at Woodyard Road. And so you'll notice the road goes east, northeast from the roundabout to 46, and then due east from 46 to Arlington Road. So that's part of our discussion in the logic of having it be West Hunter Valley Road from Arlington Road all the way over to, at minimum 46, or as I personally said, if you want to take it further, you can. There are very few addresses on Curry Pike in that stretch. There seems to be one residence, and that is it. However, on the Hunter Valley side, there seem to be several different parcels of land that have Hunter Valley. I even noticed on the parcels of land that there's very few that have Curry Pike as an address. So if you look at all those, they tend to have the other new side road names or Woodyard Road or Hunter Valley. So that's my piece from the historic preservation side. But like I said, I will be followed by our limestone expert on the Historic Preservation Board. I'm happy to answer any questions people have.
Thank you so much, Mr. Blankenship, for your informative support of the Historic Preservation Board and this name, maintaining this name. Does anyone have any questions for Mr. Blankenship? Okay, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
And if someone else would like to speak in favor of this petition, please come, Ms. Reed. It's good to see you. And if you would kindly sign in and then state the county in which you reside.
The pins do not want to write, so the ink. Oh, thank you. There we go. Thanks. Hi, my name is Debbie Reed, and I'm here twofold. I'm a member of the Monroe County Historic Board, along with my colleague Devin, and he mentioned to you the historical a little bit. You have our letter from the board and the map, but I'm also here as a member of the Indiana limestone industry, an active member of the Indiana limestone industry. And what I'd like to point out today that maybe you will consider is that Hunter Valley has been for a long time and still is a very, very important limestone district. Here's some districts that we have left: Hunter Valley, Maple Hill, Sanders, Dark Hollow, Eureka, PMB, that's short for Perry Matthews Buskirk, Peerless, Independent, Shawnee, Kelly, Victor Olytic, Ellisville, Steinsville. To outsiders, those names may not mean anything. To the industry, to engineers, architects, historical engineers, historians, quarrymen, mill owners, those names mean everything. 100 years ago, 150 years ago, and today. The reason why, if I can use an example, like the Pentagon, 9/11, when it was attacked and a large portion of it was damaged, to have these districts to remember, to call upon, then we could put something that was iconic back together quickly, and we were able to match stone, or if certain stone wasn't available, we could look to another district where they would be compatible. It's terribly important. Again, all over the United States, so many people are aware of this, and so when they call in, the most recent that I can recall is the Tribune Towers in Chicago, large restoration effort the last couple of years. And they don't call and ask for just stone. A lot of people might think that all limestone is the same color, the same quality, same texture. Oh no. What we have to do is we have to get the best match that we can for these buildings: the Washington Cathedral, the Biltmore, Empire State Building, the Capitol Building. I could go on and on. This wonderful building that we're in right now, this incredible building that I'm so proud of. If we had to do some repairs, we look upon these districts. So the reason, this isn't just nostalgia, it's not just tradition, although tradition and nostalgia is okay. Those things are okay too. It's a very definitely, it's identifying an area. We hope to have, and the industry is terribly excited about a park, this limestone park. The county commissioners and all have bought property, and we're sure hoping that we have a little bit of limestone equipment and references in there. And again, we just want this area to be known as Hunter Valley. We're not saying no North Park name, nothing like that. We're not against the development, but we are strongly opposed to changing the name because it is an identification factor. Thank you very, very much.
Thank you so much, and thanks for telling us and sharing with us your perspective.
Thank you.
Thank you. Are there other members of the public who would like to speak in opposition to these? Commissioner Thomas, did you have your hand raised?
I'll wait.
Okay. Are there other members of the public here in this room who would like to speak in opposition to this petition? If so, please come to the podium. If you're on Zoom, please raise your virtual hand or press *9 if you're calling in by telephone. I don't see anything or anyone except for Commissioner Thomas. Did you want to speak?
Yeah. I have a question. I don't know if this is a question for staff or legal. So if we say nothing about the name Hunter Valley Road, then it will continue, it will be part of this development. It will be called Hunter Valley Road. I find this story incredibly compelling, and I would like us to consider going to the roundabout. I thought that was an interesting idea from the Historic Preservation Committee, Mr. Blankenship. So I don't know if we could maybe look at that at a future meeting and not hold this petition up. And if we say nothing about the name change, then it will continue to be Hunter Valley Road. Is that correct?
Yeah, so I can answer that. Hopefully you all can hear me okay. So Ann has put in a condition of approval that they apply for a road name change. So it is a separate hearing that we'll have through the Plan Commission. We had just extended that to say apply for a road name change to extend the name North Curry Pike. So if you wanted to shorten that to say apply for a road name change and then just leave it at that, or we will just prompt it at another time because we think that there is going to need to be a road name change at some point, and you're not deciding on that name tonight.
Thank you, Ms. Nestor Jelen. Mr. Pittsford.
I just had a kind of a question, not really a question, an idea came to my mind. I had always taken for granted that the Hunter and Hunter Valley referred to hunting prey.
Oh.
And now knowing this, I wonder if we shouldn't consider maybe a road name change to Morton Hunter Valley Road or MC Hunter Valley Road. You know, so that there is some identification that the Hunter here is referenced to a specific person named Hunter and not a generalized person who hunts game. You know, and I may be totally off base, but that was, you know, of course, now I know the history, you can't unknow it. So the road name means significantly more to me, but I've only, you know, been in Monroe County for 55 years and didn't know this. So, you know, there you go.
It sounds as though there's plenty to deliberate on regarding the name change. And if I understand correctly, it's not just a historical figure that we're speaking of. It is also a limestone configuration, so to speak. So, but there are people who, with the Historic Preservation Committee and with the Limestone History Center, that you would be able to certainly advise whenever road name change would be, would come into play. So are there further questions for, yes, Mr. Enright Randolph?
So I guess what I'm hearing is we can bring this back to the Plan Commission and then determine if we're thinking about wanting to rename that whole stretch down to the roundabout, which seems like a logical approach because Curry Pike is kind of running north until you hit that bend right there at Woodyard. So my real question is, I guess, a process question. It's up to the Plan Commission to then bring this up to consider changing the name. And do we even need a condition, or do we just need planning to bring it forward to us in the
They
future?
would need to apply for it.
Well, that's my question. Do they need to, please, if you would like to weigh in, Mr. Schilling.
The Plan Commission simply has the authority to rename roads. So I think you can do that on your own or on application.
Okay. With that being said.
So that answers my question. So I think it gives us a lot of time to discuss this, and thank you.
Yes, thank you. And the petitioner has 5 minutes to rebut. So if you'd like to come to the podium and.
I have nothing further to say other than my client is happy with the road name. And I also talked to Tim Vest that owns the business on Hunter Valley, and he would like to keep the name as well.
Okay, great. Thank you so much for your cooperation. Mr. Enright Randolph.
I just want to take this one step further, and I wonder if there's a way where we can dedicate some educational material on the roadway to identify kind of who Mr. Hunter was. I agree with Mr. Pittsburgh that I didn't know the name was relative to any person, and it would be interesting if we could kind of create a spot to memorialize that, and if so, that would be up to us today to make that a condition.
Respect, maybe they can put something in the park.
Yeah.
If the county's doing, that might be something that when the county actually develops a park, that can be part of the park.
Okay.
Instead of trying to figure it out here on where we would put it throughout this development, it might be easier than just to say the county commissioners can investigate it with the park.
I agree, and it's late news, don't want to hash it out, but maybe you could take that back to your petitioner that, you know, it was discussed and kind of see if they're amenable to any ideas like that as well. Kind of put it on both parties. All right, thank you.
Thank you. So is there further discussion among or between the members of the Plan Commission, and or is there a motion or two?
I can make a motion.
Thank you, Mr. Garatas.
I may need some help here. Ann, would you slide that up a little bit so I can, am I seeing everything with the conditional?
I have this split up into 2 slides if you want to. There's only one. I think you can see all for one.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So I'm going to put these together in one motion, I believe. In the matter of PUO-23-2, and in the matter of PUD, no, I'm not. I'm going to do these separate because of the way the conditions are written. I'm sorry. The matter of PUO-23-2, North Park PUD outline plan amendment number 5, change to 8 street and alternative transportation guidelines. I move that we forward this on to the Monroe County Board of Petitioners with a positive recommendation, waiver of final hearing, and that we require the petitioner to make application for the road name changes of Curry Pike and West Hunter Valley Road, subject to staff report and findings found within the report itself.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. Please call the roll.
Okay, and Bernie, that included a waiver of final hearing, is that correct?
It did, yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Yep.
I have a question about the condition. What are you actually asking them to do?
Make application for the road change between those 2 streets, not necessarily in favor of one or the other, because that'll be something I think that we'll handle at a later date.
And they seem amenable to honoring the historic and limestone passed.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's been moved and seconded to send a favorable recommendation for PUO-23-2, which is the outline plan changes to the North Park PUD ordinance, subject to the Highway Department and Drainage MS4 coordinator reports, including the condition that the petitioner apply for a road name change in regards to West Hunter Valley and North Curry Pike area. A vote in favor is a vote to send a favorable recommendation. Edward Ullman,
Yes.
Dee Owens,
Yes.
Jerry Pittsburgh,
Yes.
Julie Thomas,
Yes.
Margaret Clements,
Yes.
Tron Enright Randolph,
Yes.
Bernie Garitas,
Yes.
Jeff Morris,
Yes.
Cheryl Munson.
Yes.
Okay, the motion carried 9-0.
Okay. In the matter of PUD-23-2, and this is also the North Park, PUD outline plan amendment number 5, change to section 8. I move that we forward this to the Monroe County Board of Commissioners with a positive recommendation, subject to findings of fact found in the staff report, MS4 operators report, and the highway engineers report.
Excuse me, Bernie. The updated motion that we separated out for the development plan, is that correct? Is just approving or denying it as a decision.
Oh, then I move that we approve it. Thank you.
I'll second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to approve PUD-23-2, which is the development plan for the road construction connecting the portion of North Curry Pike to West Hunter Valley Road. And a vote to approve would be a vote to allow the development plan to proceed. Of course, this is still conditional upon approval of PUO-23-2 due to the changes needed in the outline plan to make the development plan compliant. But a vote in favor is a vote to approve the development plan. Dee Owens,
Yes.
Jerry Pittsford,
Yes.
Julie Thomas,
Yes.
Margaret Clements,
Yes.
Tron Enright Randolph,
Yes.
Bernie Garitas,
Yes.
Jeffrey Morris,
Yes.
Cheryl Munson,
Yes.
Edward Ullman.
Yes.
Okay, motion carries 9-0.
Thank you. Thank you for coming tonight. Thank you. Have a good evening. Thank you, Mr. Blankenship and Ms. Reed as well. The last item under new business is PUO-22-2, Wiley Farm at Fieldstone, Amendment 1, Tract F, Planned Unit Development Outline. This is a preliminary hearing, and it's been requested to waive the final hearing concerning 130.23 plus or minus acre parcel in Van Buren Township, Section 02 at South Kirby Road. And I think Mr. Daniel Brown will be going over this with us. Thank you.
Thank you. So the petitioner is requesting a planned unit development outline plan amendment to propose the following. 1, new road configuration and different triggers for completing this roadway. 2, the removal of buffer yard / open space for the purposes of rerouting said roadway. 3, propose the first phase on Tract F would contain 1 use of convenience storage and adjust the remaining density per unit for the remainder area F, which is zoned for high density residential. With the Plan Review Committee's feedback, the petitioner further proposes to 1, develop only the 3.3 acre portion of Tract F for convenience storage, no residential use permitted on the 3.34 acre tract, while the remainder of the lot will remain single family residential. See second map in Exhibit 3. 2, after further study, they also plan to give the commercial site a maximum of 65% impervious surface. Also for the remainder of single-family lots of 26.22 acres would have a maximum of 40% impervious surface. This would include the road network in the calculation for the 26.22 acre remainder area. 3, the petitioner would like to commit to treating the entirety of the 3.34 acre convenience storage commercial lot in a pond to meet the post-development critical watershed values. Also, the entire road network to be treated in a pond to meet the post-development critical watershed values. And 4, clarify their use to only one use option in the 3.34 acre property of convenience storage as defined in Chapter 802 of the Monroe County Ordinance. And here's a bit of background on the lot. The area is zoned Fieldstone PUD and has been developed in different phases and sections. The original planned unit development seems to have been established first by the city of Bloomington in 1994 as PUD 63-94. The property owner intends to develop Tract F of the Wiley Farm section of this PUD with one conditional use, again, convenience storage. Again, it was originally designated as high-density residential, and a list for approved uses for each tract in Wiley Farms can be found in Exhibit 5 on the packets. The petitioner extends to establish convenience storage on 3.34 acres of this tract, as well as develop roadways for which would allow for a future expansion into this tract. The ordinance defines convenience storage as follows: a storage service primarily for personal effects and household goods within an enclosed storage area having individual access, but excluding uses such as workshops, hobby shops, manufacturing or commercial activities, and may include an on-site apartment for a residential manager. The further proposal for the residential units on Tract F will affect the density. Here is the permitted density versus the proposed density. For Tract F, they're proposing 38 units or 2.06 units per acre. In Tract G, they're proposing 26 units for 26.83 units per acre. And for Tract I, they are proposing 10 units at 0.47 units per acre. And this is just an overlay of the area showing the current parcel overlaid on the original site plan for the PUD that was created by the city of Bloomington. And here is the slope map. There are multiple karsts on this area, and as well as the zoning map on the right. And here is an overlay showing the proposed lot layouts for this section for Wiley Farms, including tracts G and I. And as you can see, there are multiple karsts towards the south, and the petitioner intends to build around those, as well as establish the convenience storage lots here at the northern end of the section. So staff recommendation is in 3, technically 5 parts. The first one I want to go over was mistakenly omitted from this presentation. Staff recommends a denial of the waiver of final hearing to provide more time for Drainage Board review at their scheduled April 5th, 2023 meeting. The next 3 are part of this greater recommendation. Staff recommends both a positive and negative recommendation to the commissioners subject to the highway engineer and MS4 coordinators reports. The first part of this is staff recommends forwarding a positive recommendation to the commissioners for the new road configuration and removing part of the buffer yard open space based on the petition's compatibility with the Monroe County Comprehensive Plan with the following conditions. 1, the petitioner is to approve an alternative connection to bedrock that better avoids sinkhole conservancy areas. 2, the petitioner is to revise the proposed impervious cover percentage to discount the road for residential areas. 3, that it be subject to comments from the Drainage Board. 4, the petitioner to propose language regarding the timing and extent of road network build-out in coordination with the timing of proposed future residential development. And 5, the petitioner is to amend the roadway design to require cul-de-sacs instead of stubs at the end of streets. The second recommendation, and this greater second recommendation, I guess you could say, staff recommends forwarding a positive recommendation for changing housing densities to tract F, G, and I with the following conditions. 1, the petitioner to designate common areas for all drainage easements when the property is subdivided. 2, petitioner to propose the following minimum design standards for each area: A, minimum lot width, and B, minimum buildable area. And 3, petitioner to designate conservation easements around the sinkholes and non-buildable area to preserve wooded areas. The third part of this greater recommendation, staff recommends forwarding a negative recommendation for adding one use, convenience storage, to tract F to the Plan Commission, which I believe is supposed to say County Commissioners, that's my mistake, based on the petition's incompatibility with the Monroe County Comprehensive Plan. And the fifth one, which again was mistakenly omitted from this presentation, is but is listed in the packet, is should the Plan Commission wish to forward positive recommendation for changing one use of tract F from high density residential to convenience storage, staff suggests the following condition: that it is subject to drainage board comments and compliance with the stormwater drainage ordinance. We have not received any further comments from the drainage board at this time. Their next meeting, again, is going to be on April 5th.
Thank you, Mr. Brown. Do members of the Plan Commission have questions for Mr. Brown? That was an excellent presentation. A lot of work has gone into this. I have one question. It's just general information. How long in general do PUDs endure? Do they ever expire?
I don't believe so, do they?
Yeah, the zoning designation doesn't expire.
It doesn't expire.
But the development plans can expire if they're not completed within a certain amount of time.
Okay. Okay, thank you so much for that clarification. Okay, the petitioner representative has 15 minutes to make your presentation for this petition. It's good to see you.
Good to see you.
Thank you. Happy spring.
It's still winter, isn't it? All right. My name is Daniel Butler. I'm with Bynum Faneuil and Associates. With me tonight is David Jenner. He is with Authentic Homes. And together we've formed this petition before you. Thank you for hearing it. This particular piece of property for us has been a couple year-long study. What to do with this piece of property, what makes sense. As Danny was describing, there's a current PUD that gives some recommendations on what to do with this. I think we've tried to veer away from that a little bit because we think that what we're proposing tonight makes sense. I think the piece that probably is going to be more in question is the commercial piece at the front or the north end of it. And so we've tried to put that at a place or a placement that doesn't take up, it's not a piece of property that takes up too much of the property. We're not asking for additional commercial beyond what we're proposing tonight. So that's why I believe Mr. Pittsford in a previous meeting had asked us, what are you going to be doing with the rest of this property? As of right now, we wish to develop or build only the commercial piece of property with the road stub that comes to it, with the intention of not having any additional commercial on this property. That would be the only piece. So he asked, what are you going to do with the rest? So we proposed or showed a plan that works with single family housing. and got away from that multifamily, more dense housing that's currently permitted on the piece of property. And so we're asking you to meet us in the middle here with our proposal to keep that. We believe it's a low intensity use that would have a low traffic use coming to it, 3.34 acres with amount of units that make sense for this area, not overdoing it. We also plan on, I think he already said 65% impervious, treating all the storm water that would come from there. The reason that this piece of property had been a couple of years of study is we've had a full topographic survey that our company has performed. When this PUD was originally written, I don't know if there was a lot of study done on this property, so we believe that this is a better proposal to do a little bit of commercial, but mostly residential in the future. And also, there's been a full car study done on this property and the property to the east to see what would this road network need to avoid, preserving environmental features. We've also done a steep slope study that this road network, this road routing would make more sense with how we're done. And that's the language that you saw in the packet from our original letter is all trying to accomplish that. So it felt a little bit confusing because we're trying to make a PUD amendment to what the language originally, but as you saw from the original PUD, it's a little confusing with arrows and different language of what's allowed in different zones. But I think I'm kind of rambling here, but the piece of commercial we placed so that it's against future commercial. So we're not proposing it against current single-family housing. So we tried to separate that from our road and put that as far as we could from the current housing. I think that's all I would like to say at this time, but I'm happy to answer questions.
Thank you, Mr. Butler. Do members of the Plan Commission have questions for Mr. Butler?
I've got one.
Yes, Mr. Caritas.
So Daniel, where's the proposed commercial or the commercial you referred to that's adjacent to, could you show that on the map? You're tall enough. Okay. So it's southwesterly. Yeah.
Of course, that property is currently vacant, but proposed for commercial.
Thank you. Any other questions for Mr. Butler, either here or online? I cannot see if Commissioner Thomas or Ms. Owens have questions. Yes, Mr. Pittsford?
Yeah, I realize you just identified the area to be commercial, and I have not read the PUD. Are there restrictions on the kind of commercial that can go in there? And obviously, I don't think petitioner owns that property, is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, so he has no control over what kind of commercial is going to go in there. Is there any limits in the PUD on the kind of commercial that can go in there?
That's a good question. I don't remember everything that was limited in that particular. Dan might know better than I do. Daniel?
Okay, well, and when we get into that, when the time comes that that property gets looked at, commercial can go in there, according to the PUD, with absolutely no action from this board. We have virtually no control over what goes on there. In this one instance, we have an opportunity to control commercial, correct?
That's correct.
Okay, just want to be clear on that.
Can I add to your statement, Mr. Pittsford?
Sure. You're still 15 minutes left, or 11 minutes.
That's right.
Yeah.
At one time, we were proposing that this could be unlimited commercial or all different types of uses that could possibly go in here, and we've heard from you that wouldn't really be a good proposal. So we are limiting ourselves now to one proposal. So tonight, if you approve us, or next month, we are limited to that one self-storage use. We are not asking for different things at this time.
Yes, Mr. Enright Randolph?
This could be a question for you, Daniel, or for you, Daniel. I guess as it's being presented, there's really no balance to what could potentially be okay, let's just say that the additional use is granted. And what we're looking at, there is no real concrete understanding of what could potentially be a storage unit versus a residential, right? You're kind of leaving it a blank canvas right now to kind of reevaluate that at a different date. Is that correct as far as what we're looking at?
You're asking for the remainder of the property?
Just basically, if you build one storage unit, does that mean you're going to build one residential? I mean, right now, you're just asking for the additional use, so really, it could all be storage units and no residential, and that's basically what's being presented today, because we wouldn't have really any say if we permitted the additional use, let's say. Is that correct? Am I correct on saying that?
I'll let Daniel answer this as well, but our wish is to build out all of the commercial storage units now with the road stub as shown, and the single-family homes would be as part of a future phase.
Right, and I mean, we have a diagram there that kind of gives us a sense, but there's really no backstop, right? As far as this is just example of what could be done. If we added the additional use, they could potentially just make it all storage units as it's being presented today. Is that correct?
One of the standards, I believe, let me check my notes here.
And as you're looking at that, I guess I'm really undecided here. I'll put my cards out there on the table and just say that, you know, it's, you know, I kind of glean this from my time on the City Plan Commission. Like, is there a ratio that is acceptable? If you're going to do 10% storage units, should the other 90% be residential? So, you know, I'm kind of curious if there's a way to bring up some type of ratio to this discussion where we know if you're going to build X amount of storage units, that there's going to be X amount of residential properties built out as well. And then I'll see if they were able to answer that question. And whenever you're ready, Daniel.
So as you can see on the screen, the petitioner has proposed to develop only the 3.34 acre portion of Tract F for convenience storage, while the remainder of lots will remain single-family residential. So at this time, that is the petitioner's proposal, merely including convenience storage on the 3.3 acre portion and the rest being high-density residential.
Okay, and so the key word I heard was proposal, and I guess I would ask legal, Mr. Schilling, a question. Unless it's a commitment, are we getting into some type of issue where, you know, they could potentially develop the whole site with storage units? I mean, that's what we're looking at with conditions, but I feel like, is that an amendment to the PUD, or do we need to make it you know, does it need to be something that they commit to? Do you get my question? Is my question being understood clearly? My concern is that, you know, there's no backstop to this and they potentially just develop them all into storage units. And what we're looking at today, I don't see any certainty that, you know, that couldn't happen.
Yeah, if your condition limits the development, then that would be sufficient.
Okay. Like I said, I'm very undecided on this, and, you know, it's going to be a tough decision if we have to act today. I'm going to just echo the recommendation of waiving the final hearing so the Drainage Board can look at this as well.
Can I ask a question, Tron?
Yes, Mr. Caritas.
So Tron, let me ask you a question then. So you're wondering if they could develop, because this is a PUO of 30.23 acres. So your concern is that they may develop, that the petitioner may want to develop the entire 30.2 acres as a convenience storage. Am I understanding you properly?
That's my concern, and as
okay,
it's
hang
being...
on,
Okay,
hang on. So yes.
Yes.
Okay. So then so in the petitioner's statement, though, he is limiting himself to 3.34 acres to be committed to the convenience storage. Is that correct?
That is the proposal, yes.
Okay, so I think that they're locked in, and again, because I just don't want staff to spend a lot of time looking at it, but I think the petitioner's saying 3.34 acres as the storage, and then the additional parcel will stay as the zoning is now, under the PUD.
And that's what I was getting. I was just trying to make
Okay.
sure that that is correct with our
Great question. I
legal
just needed to
interpretation
understand
of it.
what you were saying, because I think you had a good point. I wasn't following you very well. My fault. Thank
Yes,
you.
Mr. Butler?
I'll just bring further clarity to this conversation. We're fully prepared tonight or whenever this gets approved to commit to 3.34 acres in commercial self-storage, and the remainder to go down to single-family housing as proposed, and rid ourselves of the multifamily housing that is currently allowed on this property, which we think fits better given the kinds of environmental impacts that we think that that density is better for. So we are ready, whether I worded it well or not in my petitioner's statement, we are ready to make that commitment.
Thank you, Mr. Butler. So are there further questions from members of the Plan Commission? Ms. Munson?
Thank you. I'm concerned about the location of other commercial properties relative to your proposal. And I don't see very many when I look at a bigger picture. And I don't see any on Fieldstone Boulevard until you get up to State Road 48 and the Stonecroft Health Campus. Is that correct?
Our intention, again, you're correct currently. I believe there is a veterinary clinic somewhat nearby. It is not adjacent to this property currently, but there are uses for vacant piece of property that could be built, but you're correct, they're not there now.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. So we'll hear from members of the public who are in opposition and then in favor, and then you'll have a 5-minute opportunity to rebut. So yes, sir, if you would kindly come up and sign in and state your name and state the county in which you reside.
Good evening. Thank you for giving time. One statement that was just made by Mr. Butler, I just want to take issue with, because he said there is a veterinary service down the road, but it's not adjacent, but it is adjacent to your property. I was hoping the Humane Society, whoever runs that, would be here tonight, but I don't think they are. But the Humane Society owns those 3 lots on Fieldstone. They're adjacent to where they're going to put these.
Yes. If you could kindly speak into the microphone.
Yes, I'm sorry, yeah. I wish I had a magic
Yes.
word.
And could you
But yeah,
please-
you can see that, I mean, the Humane Society owns those 3 lots. The building is on the big lot, and then walking trails are on the smaller 2 lots, including a cemetery, a pet cemetery that is also there. And it would be right adjacent to the storage facility. I also have a question about the connecting to Bedrock as a connector. I know the original plan had them coming out on Gifford or somewhere else on Kirby, and that was nixed by the Planning Commission. And so now this is a new plan, but that would really affect our Fieldstone neighborhood, and I am part of Fieldstone. If the Bedrock connection came in. So that would be another question at a future time. Now, if I heard the very beginning correctly, I understood that the staff recommendation, I don't know what staff that was talking about, actually recommended negative for the storage unit. Did I understand that correctly? That would be the staff
Yes.
from county planning.
Yes, we are recommending a negative recommendation towards the county commissioners.
Okay, so that's why the petitioners here, they want you to overrule that negative. Okay. It is a residential neighborhood that we live in Fieldstone. I've looked around Bloomington, I don't see any storage units that are right next to a residential neighborhood. And I personally would not want to be living in these proposed houses across from the storage units. It doesn't seem to make sense to put the storage units at the entrance to a proposed housing development. To me, that is a no-go. There are plenty of storage facilities being built all over. I think they're overbuilt. You look at the one on South Curry and 45 by Walmart, they had a big proposal there, and the proposal stopped. They haven't continued on with the storage unit plan. So there must be a reason, because that looked like a big company with a lot of money. So I feel like I appreciate the petitioner wanting to put homes there, and we had heard that proposal when they came and actually talked to us at one of our meetings, HOA meetings, and that's the last we'd heard until this came up. And this kind of came up, I don't know, go backwards. I'm still not sure everybody got a letter. I talked to some neighbors, they didn't. It could be with the registered letters. I mean, there is a public record, I guess, if they did or didn't, but they were surprised, kind of shaking their head when I talked to them today.
Thank you, sir. And would you kindly state your name?
I'm sorry, Wolfgang von Buchler.
Okay, thank you. And I see there's a person who's online who has his hand raised from Gentry Services LLC, and then I'll come back to you. So please unmute yourself, sir or ma'am. Their hand was taken down. Okay, so if you would kindly come up. Oh, wait, I'm not sure what's going on here. Yeah, it's back up. So if Tech Services could unmute Gentry Services LLC. Sir, you may have, or ma'am, you may have to unmute on your screen. There could be a little small screen that says unmute yourself. Press this button.
You can also hold down the space bar.
Could you please state your name? Okay, so sir, if you would kindly come up and sign in and state your name and the county in which you reside.
I think Gentry Services is having technical difficulties. I don't see them on anymore, Margaret.
Okay, thank you. Hi.
Good evening. My name is Michael Rousey. I am representing Fieldstone as their HOA administrator. And I simply wanted to come tonight for a couple of items. First and foremost, I do agree with your negative recommendation regarding the stormwater. One of the things that I hear all the time with Fieldstone, I've been with them for quite a while, and I actually used to live there, is our drainage plan in that subdivision. There are many issues, but I feel like, you know, I speak for the HOA on this. There would be several other issues because of this development. And again, I'm not saying that the petitioner is wrong in wanting to develop the land, but there has to be a thorough understanding of what's going to happen there. The HOA feels that way, and I know as a former resident, I absolutely feel that way. And I actually lived within about 2 streets of this development. So I just wanted to point that out. The other thing I wanted to point out, there's a couple of things I noticed in the last meeting that were said. I was not here, but I did look at the packet. And one of them in particular is Exhibit 4, talking about the HOA meeting synopsis. in the letter, and again, I don't dispute the fact that the petitioner did get with me, and I don't dispute the fact that we talked about doing what we could. But one of the issues the HOA is wanting to raise is awareness in the community. Particularly the guy on the Zoom call. He lives across the street from this proposed storage unit, proposed plan along with the residential. He actually, I think, is on the spot where the Wiley Farm was when it was there. And he is, obviously, I'm going to let him speak to that, but I'm just saying, I would not want to live next to that at all. And I know he's talked to me several times about that. That's just not what we want. I don't think anybody so far that we've talked to has been in positive, full positive on that. And again, I say that because I have talked to several residents about it. Again, don't want to speak for them personally because they're not here, but just from my position, that's what I hear. And the final thing I wanted to point out on that exhibit is on the meeting that was offered up on January 19th, I was not able to be at that meeting, nor was anyone at the board on that meeting. We would really like to know who was there and what the outcome of that meeting was, because the date of the letter also indicates it was on January 18th that they submitted this request or this synopsis to you. Not trying to cause any trouble, but that is literally in the past. We're not sure how that happened. And we are not sure that this meeting even took place. So that's why we're asking for some type of synopsis of what happened at the meeting and who was there.
Okay, thank you,
very
Mr. Rousey. Thank you. Is there another member of the public who would like to speak on this matter?
Madam President, when we're done, since he's speaking on behalf of the HOA, can he be brought back up to answer questions?
Sure.
That'd be great.
Sure.
The Gentry Services is also back online, Margaret, when you get a chance.
Okay, we'll go through who's here in the room, and then we'll turn to the people online on Zoom. Hello, would you kindly state your name and the county in which you reside?
Sure. My name is Dawn Mainin. I'm the HOA president, along with Wolfgang Van Butcher, who is the vice president, and Michael Rousey, who is the administrator. So I'd like to bring up two things. One, Michael just touched upon regarding the letter. I don't know how time travel can happen, but that was great. So one thing I'd like to see is that I actually have lived in that subdivision. I was the very first home built in that subdivision. I closed on my house September 25th, 1996. So when this proposed land was going to be used for another purpose, it was considered high density. At that point, we received a notice, all residents received a notice in 2005 where the meeting was held at Millennium Property Management, their clubhouse, where we had over 200 residents and 6 law enforcement officers, including the entity from Indianapolis down there. And after hearing the concerns, the Indianapolis firm withdrew their request to build the high-density housing. So any plans, requests, that was all done away with. However, I'm really concerned about this preliminary hearing because I don't know how we can have a preliminary hearing here if none of us had the initial hearing with homeowners. So the meeting that you referred to on January 19th, I don't know how that took place, but I'd really love to see a roll call on that because I can guarantee that if we had a resident there, it was one resident and not more than one. Definitely none of the board was there, as Michael had said. So I don't know how preliminary hearing can happen without having that initial hearing. And also, it's not the responsibility of the HOA to send out those notices for that hearing, which I believe is what they had told our administrator he was going to do. But it's not our responsibility to spend residents' dues, HOA dues, to go ahead and provide a letter about your proposed assessment or your proposed development. Number two, I really want to touch upon the storage unit. As you can see with those proposed storage units, I actually am a storage unit rental person right now, a tenant. My storage unit used to be 24 hours a day. It has now gone to 6 a.m. to 10 p.m. because of 3 situations that have happened. They've had prostitution, they've had people living in the storage units, and they've had drug dealing. So now I can only access my storage unit from 6 a.m. to 10 p.m., which people come in at 6 a.m., they spend all day there till 10 a.m. or 10 p.m., they live there, they go do their third shift job, and then they come back at 6 a.m. again and repeats this behavior. That is super concerning, being exactly across from a residential neighborhood, including the property value that would decrease.
Thank you so much, Ms. Maiden. Thank you. Is there another member of the public here in person who would like to speak? Thank you. Please come to the podium and sign in and state your name and the county in which you reside.
My name is Mary Jo Day, and I live in Monroe County.
Thank you.
The people that spoke before me are part of the Fieldstone HOA. I'm a part of the Summerfield HOA, which is a part of that area out there. So we're not, if you inform Fieldstone something's going to happen, we don't get it. So I don't know whether you don't have the information, you don't have the person that needs to be contacted, or the names of the people that live in Summerfield, but we didn't even receive any kind of notification when the veterinary hospital was approved too. I mean, we didn't know what was going on there. So I would just give you that information so that everybody is informed when something's going to happen. And where these units are going to be placed, these storage units, that's right across the street from where my unit is. I'm on Fieldstone. I have another lady here that she is right across the street. And I just don't think it's a good idea, from what I just heard from the person that spoke before me, as to what goes on in some of these storage units. And property value will go down. And my safety, I think, will be affected here too. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Day. And I would just like a clarification from staff. What is the notification requirement of the builder to notify the neighborhood and to hold meetings?
It is either within 660 feet of the property boundary or 2 parcels over, whichever one is less.
Okay, and it doesn't involve an entire homeowners association?
There isn't.
So,
go ahead, Jackie.
go ahead, Tammy.
Nope.
No, go ahead, Tammy.
There is a requirement for the application for an outline plan amendment that there be a preliminary meeting of any homeowner association that's kind of adjoining the petition site. And we took the letter as evidence that they had reached out and done that correctly. There is a secondary notice that's required that staff notify of the actual petition.
Yes.
And we did check, and we did, confirm that we did that the proof of notice and all the legal notice was done correctly. So adjacent property owners that are within 2 properties to the site, no more than 600 feet though, those do receive a certified letter that this petition is taking place. But with the HOA, that's a little more of an organic, it's, we received the letter and accepted that as part of the filing.
And would we have any requirement to notify Summerfield HOA?
I would have to look and see where they're actually located in relation and confirm that with the ordinance.
Okay, thank you. Are there other members of the public who would like to speak who are present in this room? Okay, and I see Gentry Services has logged on again, and hopefully we can get you unmuted. Tech Services, if you can help Gentry Services unmute. Is it going to work? It doesn't seem as though it's going to work. Can you recommend anything to Gentry Services LLC as far as how they could speak?
I have a recommendation that they could possibly call in using the phone number and then do the star, 6 to speak.
Or they can try to hold down the space bar that unmutes them.
If you press the
keep it
space
held
bar
down.
on your computer, that might unmute you if you're calling in from your Zoom. Okay, otherwise, we're going to try to give you a telephone number so you can call in, and you would then press *9. So if you would like to telephone in, it's area code 312-626-6799. The meeting ID is 852-0905-6517. And the password is 31668. And if you call in, you would have to press *9 to be recognized. Oh, yes.
You misspoke on the password. It's 341-668.
Yes, so the password, the meeting ID, to repeat, is 852-0905-6517. The password is 341-668. Thank you, Mr. Ullman.
Madam President, I just wanted to say that I put that information in the link or in the chat, and it's able to be viewed by everyone. So if they are
Okay.
having even more difficulty trying to figure out the number, check the chat.
Okay, so Gentry Services, I think you're unmuted. I think you're unmuted, Gentry Services. So please state your name and the county in which you reside, and then you'll have 3 minutes.
Terry Gentry, Monroe County resident, owner of Gentry Services LLC, 780 South Fieldstone. I'm here to speak on the petitioner's request. Under the current discharge plan, the water is to flow under Fieldstone Boulevard due west, down the dam spillway, and then onto my property. This is not the right path. The spillway was never intended to carry stormwater with every rain event. It was designed to only flow water when the dam was over capacity. The original stormwater flow from under Fieldstone Boulevard was north to the creek via a rock-lined channel that is still there today, so that the water could be controlled by the dam's metering gates. Around 2004, 2005, the excavation contractor for the Summerfield addition illegally changed the flow of the stormwater to flow due west to keep the area of Summerfield dry while they hauled in hundreds of thousands of tons of dirt. And upon completion, the contractor never changed the flow back to its original path, which was to make a curve right after discharging under Fieldstone Boulevard, and then at about a 45-degree angle towards the north. The creek, ever since the stormwater was diverted, the flow west down the spillway has caused soil erosion and has been continuing, as the spillway was never intended to carry stormwater at every rain event. Plus, the following west purpose of the water diverting west defeats the purpose of the dam, which is to control stormwater downstream. In closing, we're hoping for a solution to this long-lasting problem, as the petition granted will only increase the stormwater flow. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Gentry, and thanks for your patience and persistence in logging in. Okay, are there any other members of the public, either here in person, on Zoom, or on the telephone, who would like to speak? If so, please raise your virtual hand, press *9, or come to the podium. Okay, I don't see anyone wishing to be recognized. So, Mr. Butler, you have 5 minutes of a rebuttal.
All right, there's a few different items brought up that I'll try to give some answers to. And we always want to, we want neighbor feedback. We appreciate neighbor feedback. We want that. We don't shy away from it. And just to reiterate before I answer some of these, we are trying to make a product here that would take into account the current neighborhood, be sensitive to the current, and continue that neighborhood over with the addition of 3.3 acres of storage units. There was one point brought up. We do a lot of projects here in the city of Bloomington and Monroe County. There was a question or a point brought up about storage units being adjacent to or right next to single-family homes. So we just got done doing a set of storage units at 3rd and Corey, and those were right next to single-family homes. So the most current one that we've done actually is right next to single-family homes. I don't know the percentage of amount that get put right next to single-family homes, but you do want them in some proximity because that's the homeowners use those the most, and it's convenient for them. The next thing I'll address is the drainage. We are going to go to the Drainage Board next month, and we do understand and know that this is in a critical watershed. When I say critical watershed, that means we have to take every bit of impervious surface on the site that we're creating and make sure, one, it goes to a pond, and then everything that flows off of it, we are below a certain amount of runoff. We can't, we do understand that downstream from us, there are current issues, flooding issues, and we want to help with that. So part of our site, not all of it, part of it flows that direction. So we want to, and we're proposing 2 ponds with our proposal, and we want to take that seriously as that will flow into that. That flooding issue is not happening on our property, but it's downstream from us. So we plan on adhering to anything the Drainage Board would recommend on that particular issue. Let's see. We did hold, so we're required by code to notify the HOA that's within 660 feet of what's going on and hold a public meeting. And we, as Tammy said, we did that. No one showed up for that. So we did make time. We did rent a room down in the convention center and notified the HOA administrator, and he acknowledged. I can't make people come, but we held that in line with current code. The last item I want to mention, there seems to be a lot of concern, maybe rightly so, about security at these types of facilities. We plan to do everything that is current in recommendation for these types of facilities and being safe. So that includes fencing, that includes cameras, that includes certain hours that you can get in and out. We want to adhere to all of that. We just did, like I said, we do self-storage projects. I think we've done 4 or 5 in the last 5 years. And I believe we're getting pretty good on understanding, especially some of the companies who specialize in that, what you need to do to be secure at these facilities, because I don't doubt it that there is a fear that that type of behavior can happen at these types of facilities, but if you have the correct measures in place, you can avoid that. But that's all I'll rebut on that time.
Thank you, Mr. Butler, and thank you, Mr. Jenner. Well, I turn now to members of the Plan Commission for further discussion. And yes, Mr. Pittsford?
Yeah, I had asked that, since Mr. Rousey is the administrator for the homeowners association, okay, so that's an occupation. Okay, so if you would, can you come back up so we can ask you a couple questions? I appreciate that. And I'm glad to see you dropped the Y from the end of Mike, because you're not Mikey anymore. So we have a little history.
A little bit.
Just a little bit. So, hey, you know, I'm going to kind of put things out here just pretty directly.
Sure.
You know, you said that you had talked with them. Nobody's in favor of a storage unit. Did you talk to them about what's available right now on this property? Do they know what he can, do they know what Mr. Jenner can do by right?
No, and again, we all heard storage units, and that's all we heard.
Okay.
We did not realize, I didn't know until tonight that this is actually a full site plan.
Right. Well, how would they have responded if they had heard Tract F? Legally, right now, nothing, he has to do nothing.
Right.
But buy the materials. Can have 184 units on it.
Well, again.
Were they
not really
aware
sure.
that Tract G can have 56 units on it? And that Tract I can have another 42 units.
Yep.
So that's how many more neighbors they can have, okay? So if they are saying, well, we don't want the storage, I get that. But we're also talking about a petitioner who has a significant investment in the land, and in order to maximize the return on his investment, he wants to take this little corner to do this, reduce the intensity of people population there permanently as a trade-off. So if that's his approach, then I think the homeowners association should also take into consideration what Mr. Jenner can by right do beginning tomorrow if he wants to. And he can build those as fast as he can get the material on the ground. You know, so I think that should be considered.
Well, and I respectfully believe you have a point. We just actually talked to another builder. You probably are well aware of the other activity on the other side of our subdivision. And what I told them is what I'm going to say to you guys, and I'm going to say to the petitioner. The HOA and the people of Fieldstone, again, most of the people I talk to are very common people. They will talk to you, but personally, I feel like this is going way too fast. The HOA, again, we just want to know what's going on. And again, there's a lot of things going on in our subdivision right now with not just their petition, but the petition. Well, I don't know what the heck happened up there in the front. I mean, we've asked more questions of the township there than we can begin to shake a stick at and don't get much answers from. So right now our neighbors are very, very, very touchy. And I said what I said earlier based on phone calls I've had with residents or email. It's not necessarily you know, something I can specifically tell you.
Right.
Yep.
And the only thing I would say, as a group, I think it would serve the homeowners association, both at Fieldstone and Summerfield, to look at what is available on the remaining open ground contiguous to your current developments, you know, and bear in mind, when those developments went in, nobody wanted you there either. You know, nobody really wanted Fieldstone except the city of Bloomington. So there you go.
So, Mr. Rousey, I just would like to clarify that a project has been approved for 300 multifamily units at the corner of Park Square Boulevard and 3rd Street, and that there's a community center by Van Buren Township that's going in on West 3rd Street. But that being said, I have a question for staff. If Mr. Butler and Bynum and Fania were able to, and Jenner Homes was able to go ahead with what is currently permitted, 184 units on Tract F, would that still be subject to stormwater review?
To my knowledge, yes, it would.
So if it were to be subjected to stormwater review, that number could go down. So it's not necessarily a carte blanche 100, because we're aware, if I'm not mistaken, that this particular development, Fieldstone in particular, because of the drainage issues that Mr. Gentry brought up, that the county had to pay close to $1 million to alleviate and remediate drainage issues that the homeowners association had not been formed properly to remediate. Isn't that correct? Is this the PUD in which the drainage?
I could speak to that just in
Yes, Mr.
Commissioner
first Mr.
Thomas.
Rousey, and then first I asked a question to staff, and
I-
then
I was just
Mr. Rousey, and
gonna
then
s-
Mr. Enright
okay.
Randolph. Thank you.
That might be a better question to ask of the MS4 coordinator, who I think was on earlier this evening, but I do not see them.
Kelsey Thetonia, if you're available to speak about that, I know that you weren't.
She is on there. Yep.
Yeah,
Her
you
hand's
weren't-
raised.
Yes, yes, I see. But you weren't the coordinator at the time, but if you could address this, if you know about it, I'd be grateful.
Hi, this is Kelsey. Could you say the question again, please?
Yes, I believe that Fieldstone, this PUD, had drainage issues such that the county had to remediate and to solve the drainage issues because the homeowners association had not adequately formed or had been adequately funded to resolve the drainage issues. So the county had to pay close to, I don't know what it was, $100,000 or maybe $1 million. What was it? 80,000. You know, what are a few more zeros? Pretty soon we'll be talking about real money, you know? So, yes, so if you could address what happened, what didn't happen, what was supposed to happen, and whether or not Tract F has any dream at all of coming up with 184 units and building it on that Tract F of land.
All right. I will want to go back and do some research to specifically address your question about the work that was done before the HOA form, since I was not working for the county at the time. So if it's okay with you, I will address that at a later time.
Okay.
I know that there has been a lot of work between the HOA and the county to manage the Fieldstone Regional Detention Facility. And we continue to, share different roles to this day. The Fieldstone Detention Facility is very important for drainage in the Cave Creek watershed because we have a sinking stream with a 4 square mile drainage area. We have 6 homes that are impacted by the floodplain at the terminal sink off of Cave Road. So significant drainage concerns in this specific watershed, which is why we have the critical drainage release rates for new development in certain parts of our county. This is a big reason why. So for this tract, there are some things that are tricky drainage-wise. Most of the site on the north half does drain to the north. We've heard the discussion about the modifications to the Fieldstone spillway that I'm still investigating. I'm still trying to dig up anything I can about construction during that time, the original plans. From what I've found, the original spillway was designed at 830 feet. And I'm trying to figure out basically what it was designed to do, if it was even constructed properly to begin with, should it have been flowing in that direction. The specific part of the Wiley Farm PUD is shown on the original Fieldstone Dam construction plans as draining to the south, but it definitely warrants more research on my end.
Well, thank
East
you.
side, sorry?
I mean, I understand we really put you on the spot without much time to prepare, but, you know, there were some assertions here that said that they could build that densely right now on that piece of property, and I just don't know if that's true or if the restrictions on the drainage would preclude that kind of dense development, and maybe it's not an answerable question right now.
I don't think I want to say yes or no right now, but I have concerns about the risk of developing in areas that are draining south of the regional detention facility, as well as the area to the east that does drain to the detention facility, because you're going through drainage ditches that are along the rear and side yards of people's homes, existing infrastructure that I need to assess whether or not it's adequate. It's going to be a big deal to develop this from a drainage perspective.
That's very helpful. Thank you so much, Ms. Tonia. At least it indicates to me that we should not be in a hurry to approve this. And I believe Mr. Rousey was to be recognized, and then Mr. Enright Randolph.
Yeah, and actually, she clarified a lot of what I was going to say, but when you say $1 million, I believe, if I remember all the documentation, it's been many years, I've read it all, that was the original cost of the dam. There is a level, as the state puts it, a level B dam, which is pretty severe if it were to be compromised. So, I mean, they take it very seriously at the state level. I think you guys here at the county level definitely need to do the same. And then the 90,000 was for the, there's some mechanicals there that allow for all those gates to go up and down based on the water levels and what's going on both ends. I actually have friends that live on that court down there at Cave Road, and I'm telling you, water's up here.
Yeah.
When that is failing. And that, I mean, some of those people have actually been flooded in their homes. So it's extremely important that works right.
Well, thank you so much, Mr. Rousey. Mr. Enright Randolph?
Really no further comment, just that I'm sure there's a lot of different costs to the county to bear due to infrastructure right away. But if you're talking about the Fieldstone Dam and putting those sluice gates on there, I was on the Stormwater Management Board, and I think it roughly came in around $90,000 to help assist with that issue. So they, but I think Kelsey did a terrific job of bringing up points that we want to iron out at the Drainage Board level. And I'll go ahead and address that. Yeah, it is in a critical drainage way, and there are more strenuous release rates. But that may or may not impact the amount of buildable land. There's a lot of analysis that needs to be done to really determine how many lots, if that was what your question was, could be built on there. But I think the point that Jerry brought up was significant because, you know, it just kind of brings some context to the discussion that, you know, this is what they can already do. Maybe there's here or there on how many units, but I think that's very important for the HOA to understand the whole scope of the discussion and what is already permitted. So when they're kind of remonstrating against certain things, they can really have an informed decision because they might go with the less density versus the commercial use. And again, I'm undecided on that, so I want to clarify that, but I appreciate the comment and the discussion, and I actually have worked with some of these gentlemen back in 2016 when we started to address the Fieldstone Dam issue.
Yes, well, thank you so much. So back to members of the Plan Commission. We could either just agree to hear it at our next hearing. If I don't think, is anyone burning to try to run an approval? If so, yes, Mr. Butler, yes.
May I speak, Madam President?
Sure.
I just wanted to reiterate even what your point is, that's why we even brought up impervious surface numbers that we would like to commit to because of this type of concern. We do agree with you that this is the better development, and we'd like it to come together as a package so that it really makes sense for this property. And we do understand what is currently by right. I think we could do it drainage-wise, but we really think it committing to some lower numbers impervious-wise with single-family homes and, you know, this other project that we want to do at the front end makes sense to us. I just want to reiterate that.
Thank you so much, Mr. Butler, and I'm sorry. You're right to be able to answer after these things were said, after you had already rebutted. So thank you for speaking up and for your good work. Thank
I do
you.
have one more question, though.
Yes,
I
Mr.
think-
Garitas.
Just curious, Daniel, on the drainage flow in the post-developed state, is some of this water supposed to go over to the regional pond or not? Is any of this planned to go over to the regional basin?
We are not planning for it to. We don't want to utilize that because of the current issues and the problems. We don't want to put any more burden on that because they're trying to solve problems over there, not add to. So that's why we want to take care of everything on our property, release it at slower rates so that actually will help.
So do you know if the regional basin was sized to accommodate some of the flow off this property? And if you don't know the answer, just that might be an interesting point to get out of the drainage board to understand that.
To answer your question, I believe it was, but I don't believe it was constructed right. And so that's part of the question. And so we also, again, understand that what is out there, we need to also design with that analysis. So I believe, to answer your question, 90%, I believe this to be true, that it was supposed to flow in that direction.
That's an important point for me to understand, so thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Butler. Thank you. Now, yes, Mr. Enright.
I just wanted to extend the thank you to Mr. Butler too, because I was the one that requested some calculations, rough math of what impervious and impervious surface might we encounter when looking at the discussion of conditional use and density.
Okay, so thank you. Now, this will have a second hearing. Can you give the public the dates of our next hearing on this item?
Sure. So if there's no action taken by the Plan Commission tonight, this will automatically be forwarded to our April 18th regular Plan Commission meeting, which is a hearing in which you'll be able to speak again. It will also go to an administrative meeting on April 4th. That's a public meeting in which there's no public comment taken, but there could be clarification made by the petitioner. There's also going to be a drainage board meeting that will be taking place on April 5th. And I believe that's at 8:30 a.m. and that's on the events calendar. And that's with our Highway Department Stormwater MS4 coordinator. And so those are the meetings that this will be going to next.
So there will be a drainage board meeting, a plan commission administrative meeting at which the public is not really allowed to speak, but you can tune in by Zoom or come in person. But then the regular meeting of the plan commission is when the public can testify. So just to let you know that this will be coming up, and then just so you know what to expect. So I want to thank everyone for coming tonight, and we just have a few items to turn to see if there's any administrative business from the planning department or from legal. Nothing? Okay. Yes, Mr. Enright.
I don't have anything.
Yeah, I just have one thing of business, and I made note of it at the Surveyor Review Board earlier today, and I want to make note of it again today. Dave sees it's coming. Today is 18 years of service to Monroe County for me, so.
Oh, wow.
Just wanted to mark the day.
Congratulations, and thank you for your service. And I'd like to acknowledge also Mr. Schilling had a work anniversary of 1 or 2 Fridays ago. How many years?
37.
Oh, thank you for all of your service, Mr. Schilling. Thank you.
Madam President, can I point something out too? I mean, it's not a work anniversary, but just to put things in context, both Mike and David were young men, and the Ellisville Baptist Church when I was in college, and they were both part of my youth group. So having them here on two different kind of approaches puts me in a very Salome position.
Now that goes into overtime. We could hear
I wanna
some
say this
stories.
This maybe a surveyor's too.
This might
I
be,
have to check that.
no? Okay.
I'll move for adjournment.
Yesterday was Smash Burger Day. Okay, take care and thank you. Thank you, everyone.